Thank you, Chair. We are now live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's Scrutiny Commission meeting. Members of the Commission present this evening are Councillors Anthony Amatharaj, Dominic Bowick, Jeremy Cottam, Paul Dick, Ross McKinnon, Eric Pattenden, Christopher Reid and Martha Vickers. We are also joined this evening by Councillor Heather Codling, who I believe is with us online this evening, Ian Cottingham and Nigel Foote in the Council Chamber, and also by Council Officers Joseph Holmes, Acting Chief Executive, Anne-Marie Dodds, Executive Director for Children and Family Services, who is joining us online, Rebecca Wilshire, Service Director for Children's Social Care, Karen Atala, Service Manager for Children and Family Services, John Winstanley, Service Director for Environment, and Paul Coe, Executive Director for Adult Social Care. Gordon Oliver is the clerk for the meeting and Thomas Radbourne is the Zoom host. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. If we hear the fire alarm, we must leave the building immediately via the emergency exits. The assembly point is the Dolphin Car Park. If the lockdown alarm sounds, we will await instructions from officers. We will adjourn the meeting until such time as it is safe to proceed. Finally, I would like to take the opportunity to remind members that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, including, importantly, respect. We may not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements, we are always respectful of others' views, please. Do members have any questions about the way in which this meeting will be conducted? Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies?
No, Chairman, no apologies.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. So we have 2 sets of minutes this evening from the 24th of September, firstly. Do members have any comments on those, please? Yeah, Councillor Reid.
On the section on delivering better value, I probably didn't express myself very well with one of the actions that are requested. I think it's examples of success in delivering better value or success criteria from other authorities ahead of West Berkshire is really what I wanted, because they seem to have difficulty in expressing what success looks like in DBV.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I'm conscious that one of the actions is for me to work with Mr. Oliver on a long-term log to track the implementation of scrutiny recommendations. As we've mentioned before, we make recommendations to executive, and they decide whether or not to accept them. And what we haven't been very good at in the past is actually keeping an eye on those recommendations long-term to ensure that the ones that executive accept have then actually been implemented. So I think Mr. Oliver and I probably need to pin down a time frame for doing that. So I think we'll go away and think about a time frame for that, and we'll obviously consult you as members of scrutiny about how that log will actually look in practice. Has anyone got any comments on that particular point? No. Okay, thank you. And then it also mentions about action 165 about having a joint work planning session with the leader of the council and the executive. I think we need to slightly reword that. It's not a work planning session because, as we know, scrutiny is independent of the executive. But as members who were members over a year ago, they will remember that we did have a session at Shaw House where we sat down together and had what I would describe as dialogue. It's by no means the case that executive dictates to scrutiny what our agenda is, but we can, of course, continue to have that constructive dialogue. So I think we should just change that just to make that clear. Is that acceptable to members? Yes, great. Thank you. Great. Okay, just going through my notes. I think one of the actions was to confirm if corporate parenting is included in the member training programme. That's happening at 6 o'clock on the 11th of December. So that is happening. Wonderful. Okay. Could I have a proposer for those minutes, please? Councillor Dick. Seconder, Councillor Cottam. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. I should sign those. Thank you very much. And then the minutes of the meeting that we had with Thames Water and the Environment Agency on the 17th of October. Any comments on those? Councillor Amatharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the questions I asked the instructor about the compensation levels they are giving for the affected customers for the sewage. I think action at the page 20, there is an action which seems to be open-ended, unlike the other actions, which has got a clear what they're going to do. It just leaves it to assumption or guessing. So can that be closed down to say when they are going to finish that and what subsequent remedial action they're going to do for the compensation levels?
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, Councillor Cotton.
Thank you. About written answers, I put in a question about the ownership and position of the Thatcham sewage works. Unfortunately, I was unable to make the meeting. I can't actually trace the response. Is that being made to us, or are we still awaiting an answer, or did it get lost in space?
That might be in the action log. Should we have a look when we get to that item? Yeah.
Certainly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No. Anyone to propose those minutes, please? Councillor Matharaj, seconder, Councillor Pattenden. Thank you. All those in favour? Anyone against? No. Abstentions?
Abstentions, go on there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great. Thank you very much for that. So on to item 3, actions from previous meetings. Members are asked to note the progress in relation to the actions. I have updates here about some of the actions. Action 141, Councillor Gawley, meetings are continuing in collaborative fashion. A recent joint media briefing was held to highlight work completed by various agencies and what is ongoing. Letters to the new administration are in progress. Action 143, Councillor Gawley, feedback from the Environment Agency. It says here the Environment Officer who joined us on the site visit has requested a water quality monitoring device to be deployed along the Northbrook. We have a limited number of these devices available, and for obvious reasons, they are all currently deployed at sewage treatment works across the Thames catchment. He has also had to focus his time on inspection visits to treatment works, but did say he would repeat the request with the officers who manage this equipment in case one can be made available. But we cannot promise this will happen, nor can we say when this may be possible. Action 178, Susan Tanner. Neil Goddard would be happy to bring the performance dashboard to Scrutiny Commission when invited to do so. Action 179, Susan Tanner. This is complete. Action 185, check if members would like to propose a third project for the Project Management Task and Finish Group. I think we can come to that later on in the agenda when we discuss the Task and Finish Groups. Action 190, Thames Water, check if Councillor Reid has received details of the lining works in Stangford Dingley. No, so that needs to be chased up then. And actions 194 to 196, Environment Agency. We will chase them for further updates. Does anyone have anything else on the action plan? Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Chairman. Going back to the top of the list, there's quite a few that are have been in progress for a very long time. Libraries, we had a bit of an update on Thames Water, but those sorts of things. I mean, what are we doing to either close them down or reinvigorate them?
Yeah, good questions. Thank you. We've actually got Councillor Foote with us. I don't know if you want to fill us in on what's happening with the libraries report.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, it's ongoing, but the chair of this committee has been in touch with me about that, and it's something that I will be in touch with the chair at the earliest opportunity I can. But work is being done on that. You might be aware that there is now an additional officer, which has freed up some capacity for that, and so I hope to update you shortly on that.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's in the paper that says there's another officer, but I mean, it goes back to early part of last year. I mean, do you have any kind of ambition at all, Councillor Foot, to move it on?
Thanks, Chair. Well, I certainly have ambition. And as I say, it's a piece of work that we're working on. So I will update you via the Chair at the earliest opportunity I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Yes, Councillor Matharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, action 191 on the compensation levels, you can see it's marked as complete and marked as see attached response. I guess that attached response for the answer to the initial question, but in the meeting, they acknowledge that the levels needs to be looked at. So can that be reopened or looked into see like what
Yes,
specific?
just scrolling down. Yes, no, I think we can do that to take into account your request for more detailed information and a timescale. Thank you. So we need to put in a status for 190, providing Councillor Reid with details to say that that's ongoing. Regarding transformation, just scrolling back up again. Got big action log, haven't we? So item 130 about transformation, Mr. Oliver and I had a meeting with Gabrielle Mancini, who leads this area of work, a couple of weeks ago, and she very kindly gave us an update. So we do have an item on the agenda long term to have a discussion about this at Scrutiny, but I will take this opportunity to share with you some of what Gabrielle told us. As we know, the care homes proposals went to the last executive on the 7th of November. So we've seen what's happening with that. Council tax for non-statutory obligations is in the budget consultation. The employer value proposition, which is to encourage more people to apply to the council to work here. A new website was launched a short while ago. And as we know, the executive are trying to decrease the costs of agency staff and get more PAYE. So that website's there if you want to have a look at that. Home to school transport, which we know is the third biggest item of spending for the council. There is a new officer who has started work on that area. So hopefully there'll be more information on that soon. And I think some of the delivering better value work has to be done before they can do some of the home to school transport work. Walnut Close is another thing that Ms. Mancini has been working on. That is being refurbished. There is a family space there, which is already open. And they are also going to work on some accommodation for the homeless in that space as well. And that is going to Eastern Area Planning in a fortnight's time. And I've also noticed the executive forward plan has got options for Shaw House on it. So all of those things are part of the transformation programme. I don't know if members are minded to ask for an item at a future meeting about any of those particular things. We could ask just for a general update on transformation, or if there's anything specific on that list that you'd like us to look at. Councillor Bowick.
Yeah, I think a general update on transformation. I was a bit puzzled by on item 130 where it talks about the scope of the report needing to be further resigned. You know, it's kind of kicking it in the long grass, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So I think we try and do that in the new year then at the earliest opportunity. Thank you. Action 132. The action was to prepare a report about the emergency response to last winter's flooding. Can we just make it clear in the notes section that that was received as a presentation, not as an actual report? Just so that we know for the historic record that there wasn't a report, but we did comment on the presentation that was given. Just in case anyone goes back to this and says, oh, there was a report, where can I find that? It's important that we're consistent for the historic record. Right, anything else on actions list? Yes, Councillor Cotton.
Just hope there's an action on my written question.
Sorry, beg your pardon, yes. So we need to make sure that's covered as well. Mr. Oliver,
Thank
can
you.
take a note of that and we'll cross-reference, thank you. And also 161 I notice is outstanding about the performance report year end and about having data. So what do we need to do to chase that up? Is that something we need to go to Jenny about? 161.
Yeah, I think this is something that is technically quite difficult to do. This is to do with the little tiny graphs that they had in the document. I think they're working on producing PDF reports, so I'll touch base with Jenny and just see where they've got to with that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Oliver. And then I think last but not least from me, 180, high needs block and delivering better value. As members will know, we've decided to look at this every 6 months. And one of the actions for me is to invite the Department for Education and Regional Director to come to the next one in March. So I will talk to Anne-Marie Dodds about that and get that actioned. Great. Oh, actually, and 195 and 196 haven't got a status against them. So we just need to check those as well. Any other comments? No. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, on to item 4, declarations of interest. Any declarations? Councillor Cotton.
Yeah, some decades ago, I was involved in setting up the Downlands Sports Centre, but I don't feel this will have any relevance on my discussion and voting if it comes to that.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No? Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any petitions received?
No, Chairman, no petitions received.
Okay, thank you. Right, on to item 6, response to Faraday Road football ground. So the reason we're looking at this evening, Mr. Morgan, a member of the public, asked us a series of questions about Faraday Road and our Scrutiny Commission if they would look at that. Mr. Oliver and I looked at that and we agreed that it did meet the threshold for scrutiny to have a look at it. We do get items from the public asking us to scrutinise things and they don't meet the threshold. So an example of that recently was about a speed limit. And obviously things like that can go to Transport Advisory Group. They're not a matter for scrutiny. So just to, for the members of the public, for their benefit, just to outline how we look at those issues. So officers have very kindly written a report in response to Mr. Morgan's questions. I'm minded to suspend standing orders to allow Mr. Morgan to outline his concerns to us and to give him 3 minutes to speak, and also to allow him to ask a supplementary question. So the process would be Mr. Morgan speaks for 3 minutes, then the officers present their paper, and then members of scrutiny get to ask questions, and then Mr. Morgan can ask a supplementary at the end. I think that would be consistent with our previous practice. As members will be aware, we had flood wardens who had the opportunity to speak at the last meeting. So I would like to propose that we suspend standing orders. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cotton. All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? No. Okay. So, Mr. Morgan, would you like to address us? You have 3 minutes. I'm just going to set my timer. Yes, please. Yeah, and if you turn the button on.
Okay. It's been a long time since I've been down the council chamber, so it's good to have a good crowd. So thanks everyone for turning out.
Over to you then, 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've got no agenda to actually prove tonight. As most of you know, I've been involved in Faraday Road for a long, long time, since 2016. So consequently, I have a lot of knowledge and detail on this subject. When I saw some of the detail coming out about the current spend on Faraday Road, it raised concerns, and that's why I asked the Scrutiny Committee to look into it. So that's the background, that's why I'm doing it, nothing else. I've sent through this afternoon, Caroline and Gordon, sort of updated papers with respect to Faraday Road. It's not £230,000 as in the report, it's now up to £430,000. So we're looking at not 230, but 430. So it's a substantial amount of money. So that's the first point I want to make. There's a lot of detail I've covered on there. So in 3 minutes, I'd just like to pick out maybe 2 or 3 points. First of all, project objective, scope and detailed plan. This has always been my bugbear. I've always been very critical of the fact that projects should have upfront project plans and objectives that are clear, defined, and everyone can understand. If you look at, for example, most successful projects are broken down in project plans, various stages and phases. Most people, including me, assumed and expected the overall project objective for Faraday Road is to rebuild a first-class football pitch and associated stadia. That's what we thought it was going to be. Yeah, I was quite surprised and not surprised when I read John's report that said the project scope was to enable the most basic level of league football to take place on the site, at the start of the new football season in September 2023. That, to my mind, is very unambitious and does not reflect what we all thought was going to happen at Faraday Road. The other point is he raised 230k with the cost, but as I mentioned earlier, it's not. It's now up to 430k. I asked, was it really approved as a project? Was that really approved by the members that was the project objective? A basic level of football. Was that the objectives, guys? I'm staggered and surprised. If it was, it's piecemeal. And again, Caroline, you all know back on the Faraday Road task force some time ago, it says projects should be in their holistic form, not in piecemeal form. And again, we're going back to piecemeal basics here. The second point I'd like to raise is the budget on that cost and outcome. As I mentioned, it's 430k. Some of the big costs of the fencing from Volker Highways at £171,000. £171,000 for 2 sides of fencing, which I think needs scrutiny in itself. We know where Volker Highways are a term contractor, but I'll get onto that in a minute. We also know that Volker Highways did trenching utility 113k, and temporary cabin and install was nearly 80k.
You've got 10 seconds, sorry,
Okay.
Mr. Morgan.
So my big question is, if you look at nothing else, look at why the term contractor for highways, street lighting and road maintenance got involved in such a way in this project. And why did people agree and allow that to happen? A lot more to say, but I appreciate I've only got 3 minutes. But I do genuinely think it needs looking at the project side and the cost side, because I think a lot should be learned from what's happened.
Okay.
That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. Right. Councillor Foote and Mr. Winstanley, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think it would be best if I deferred to Ms Winstanley in the first instance, and then I'd be happy to obviously come in as and when. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start off with the brief. The brief was discussed at a meeting with Newbury Community Football Group and with a representative from Newbury Football Club at a meeting on the 20th of July. And it was made clear that the first phase, which this was the first phase of the programme, was to return football to Faraday Road. So I'm kind of surprised that wasn't clear, because you were at that meeting. This was also discussed at the Newbury Community Forum, where we tabled the plans. We tabled all the plans of what we were delivering at Faraday Road, including the fences, etc., etc. And that showed that we would, the first phase of this was to deliver football back to Faraday Road. And that was made abundantly clear, and that was welcomed. That was welcomed by the Newbury Community Football Group and by Newbury Football Club itself. So that was always part of the plan. That was very, very clearly communicated from the outset. Obviously, there are ambitions to provide something else, and these studies are ongoing. We're looking at provision of a 3G pitch and further provision and growing that facility. And indeed, the work that we're doing at the moment is to allow league football to be played there. So it was always there's going to be several phases to this, which have been delivered as promised. The main crux of your request and your assertion about the value for money, it does table around the fencing, and you've compared fencing quotes that you've received to what Volker provided. Now, Volker are a multidisciplinary contractor. They do a huge amount of sort of cover a huge spectrum of work, and the work that they've delivered here is in line with what the contract is there to deliver. It's fencing, it's delivering trenching works and ducting works, so it is in line with the term contract, and it's a purely legitimate use of that contract. So I don't propose that that's under question. In terms of the actual cost, it's about comparing apples with apples. Now, you provided costs, and I've put that in my report, that compare what Volker provided in the specification, which is a 4-metre high and fence with an 8-metre goal catch, with a 3-metre high fence and a 6-metre goal catch, which is what you provided. Course, now they have vastly different specifications. So the what Volker provided is far superior, and there's good reasoning behind that, why that was provided, and it was all discussed at the forums. So we were tasked with providing fencing at either end of the pitch to prevent balls from damaging the buildings and business to the north. It was very clear that we needed to do that, and to protect users of the footpath and the park area to the south, and also to prevent balls going in the river. And that was of particular concern to members because of the tragic incidents that's happened at that river. We don't want people going in there trying to fish balls out. It's a very dangerous piece of water. So it was very clear as part of the brief that we needed to provide sufficient protection, and we wanted to provide as high a possible fence. We don't think that 3 metre it was never in the sort of our consideration to provide 3 metre, because that's not sufficient. 4 metre is what we've provided at other similar facilities, like at Hennick. And also it was what was there as part of the original pitch. So we wanted to replicate that. And also we had, with the aspiration to move to a 3G pitch, 4 metre is what we provide at those facilities as well. So that's why we provided the 4 metre pitch. Also, the goal catchers, which were 8 metre, they were to replicate what was there originally. So we wanted something far in excess of the 6 metre that was on your quote. We wanted 8 metre, which was going to be what is needed for that particular pitch. As I mentioned, that was all agreed with members. It was agreed as part of the discussions at those meetings on the 20th of July and at the Newbury Community Forum. That specification was agreed, it was tabled, and that was what was taken forward. At no point was the specification questioned in terms of the type of fencing of the goal catcher. And it was ever part of our thinking to provide anything substandard to that. I think my point is that I've not been provided with any evidence that what has been provided in terms of that specification does not provide value for money. Volker would have, gone through their supply chain and provided a value for money product. So I'm struggling to understand why that the assertion is that we haven't provided value for money on that.
Sorry, go on.
And in terms of, you mentioned about sort of the project plan and brief. Well, that is an ongoing process in terms of the delivery of the whole site and the future aspirations for the site.
Okay. Can I come back on that, John?
No, sorry, this is an opportunity for the officers to present.
In terms of the sort of the discrepancy in cost, the 4 metre will cost a lot more. You're talking about more material, you're talking about more manpower to erect, you're talking about significantly larger sort of foundations, etc., etc. So there will be discrepancy. In terms of some of your other points within your questions about the specification around the delivery of the pitch upgrade itself, sort of the works to the ground, that was delivered by our countryside manager and our contractor, who was Continental, who do all our pitches. So that was subject of a very comprehensive blog during last year, where we described all the work that we were doing. The communication was out there for everybody to see, to show that we had to do certain things at certain times dependent on the weather conditions. So that was very well communicated. We tried to describe exactly what we're doing and why. And we did that to a good standard, and that we've been complimented on the end product. So in terms of the delivery of the actual improvement to the pitch, I feel that was done appropriately, and that was also delivered through an existing contract. And the other point that you make in your questioning was, why didn't we give this work to Whitehorse Contracting? We've got no contractual relationship with Whitehorse Contracting. We need to go through a constitutional procurement route, and the way that we have procured this through our existing contracts is in line with our constitution and procurement law. And I believe that covers the sort of the basis of the questions that Mr. Morgan put in his request.
You're saying you don't have a contract?
Sorry, Mr. Morgan, sorry. Councillor Foot, you'll get the opportunity to ask a supplementary when the members have asked their questions of the officers. Councillor Foot, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Thanks, Chair. Am I allowed to ask Mr. Morgan a question?
No, sorry.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to...
if that's okay with everyone else.
No. So we suspended standing orders and we agreed the procedure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. I think one of the things, Chair, we need to be very clear on are the figures that are quoted, because we've had a quotation from Mr. Morgan of 430 odd £1,000. Yet in the written responses that we have, you'll see that in the supporting information on where are we, page 6, there's a figure of £230,000 quoted. Now, I think it's very important for the committee to be very clear what dates those refer to. Is that, for example, from 2023 to 2024, or is it the projected spend from 2023 to 2025? You know, we're not clear on those figures. So I think maybe that's something that the Commission would like to take away and establish, because that clearly is very, very important information that the public need to know. And I'd be quite happy and I'd be comfortable when that is clarified. Thank you, Chair. I'd say that first of all. The other thing I'd like to say is that, as is well known, in the election in April 2023, the Liberal Democrat administration, part of their major plank, if you like, of their election strategy was to bring football back to Faraday Road. And you may recall that in April 2023, Faraday Road football ground was simply a meadow. It was where people walked their dogs. The stands had gone. They'd been dismantled and taken away. The clubhouse had burnt down. There was absolutely nothing there. So when we took control of the council, there was quite a task to actually get football back. And you may recall that in November 2023, there was a football match played at Faraday Road. The grounds maintenance staff had worked very hard to get the grass into a condition that junior teams could play a match on, and that was played in November 2023. We had the first senior game played on the 9th of November of this year, there were changing facilities there and hospitality as well, and a grandstand. All of that infrastructure was put in by the council, by the operatives of the council, working extremely hard to deliver that. And again, a point I'd like to make is that all of that infrastructure can be reused. That can be utilised in other parts of the district when the time, you know, their lifespan has come to the end of its natural life, or it's replaced with something on a more permanent basis. So it can all be reused. And as Mr. Winstanley has mentioned, the fencing, that can also be dismantled and reused if necessary in other parts of the district. So that was a very important part of the procurement for the infrastructure for this. And the other thing, the final thing, well, there are two more points I'd like to make. First of all, this is a phased undertaking, because when you start with just a square of grass, you know, as I say, a meadow in effect, with absolutely nothing there, you have to do these projects in phases. And so we're getting to the end, if you like, of phase 2. We've had junior playing on that pitch, and now we're up to senior level. And obviously looking ahead, we've got things like looking at the possibilities of installing a 3G pitch there. We're looking at the feasibility of that. So it's a progression. So they're going to be phases. And that comes back to the original point I made about the fact it's rather difficult to talk about costs unless we know timescales, which we've not been presented at this committee. So I think I would like to just sort of leave it at that at the moment. Obviously, I'd be very, very happy to answer members' questions in due course, but I'll stop there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Foot. I'll open this up now to questions from members. Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question to Councillor Foot. Did you agree the report, Councillor Foot, that's here in your name?
Yes.
And you're asking for more work to be on it to be done and further clarification of contents?
Well, Councillor Burke, the thing is that we've had in the report, as I've said, we have a figure on page 6 of £230. We've been informed by Mr. Morgan that in his opinion, the cost is 430 or 400, I can't quite remember, 430,000. Now, clearly, there's massive discrepancy there. And I asked Chair about whether we could clarify that. Obviously, it's not for us, we can't do that at the moment, but there's no reason why we can't clarify that, because what I want to know is whether that figure is a figure that includes all the spend to date and projected spend going forward, or whether it's simply what has been spent to date, because what has been spent to date is what is quoted in the report.
Thank you. So I've got a couple more, if you don't mind. You've touched on my question really, which is twofold. Can Mr. Winstanley give us an idea of what the end cost is going to be for this entire project? And would that cost have been more or less than doing it in this phased way that we appear to be? I perfectly understand that projects run in phases, but there's a unique characteristic here where there's a hiatus after phase 1 to allow the ground to be used. Presumably at some point you're going to go on to phase 2, phase 3. Had it all been done in one seamless, one end-to-end project, would the cost have been more or less? So 2 questions there.
Yeah, just to clarify that the figures that are quoted in this paper are what were originally in Mr. Morgan's letter and what he was asking to be scrutinised, which is what was spent last year as part of phase 1. The work that's ongoing at the moment, we do have costs for that. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but that's information that we can provide, what the total cost of this next phase will be. And then obviously looking further ahead, if there's 3G, that will be another phase, and there'll be another sort of additional cost. But we've been very careful that what we have done, we haven't had to double count. So all the fencing that we provided, it was sufficient enough for 3G, so that wouldn't have to be replaced. So that would be, useful for a 3G pitch and at the required height. So no, I don't believe there would be additional cost if we'd done it all at once compared to doing it in 2 separate phases.
Thank you.
Councillor, no, sorry, Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. We will talk about this in greater detail at another time in another place. And I'm sorry you used that expression, football's coming home, because why would you? But it hasn't. It's at Hennick. How did we make that mistake?
Thanks very much, Chair. Well, in answer to your question, Councillor Dick, football is coming back to Faraday Road. It has been played at a senior level at Faraday Road. We are currently having to accommodate the Football League's requirements that they need larger size changing rooms. But I can assure you there is going to be football played at Faraday Road. And as I said earlier, this is, if you like, phase 2 of this getting back from what was a meadow, as I say, that was completely levelled. There was nothing there apart from the grass. So we have to start from, one point, and Rome wasn't built in a day. So, we are where we are.
Thank you, but you didn't answer the question. It's a stupid mistake to me, wasn't it? Leagues have rules and we didn't read them.
Well, I would dispute that. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, a couple of questions, if you don't mind. No, I'm going to have to follow up on what Councillor Dick said. How on earth were changing rooms provided that did not meet the league's requirement? How did that happen?
Okay, well, just for context, we were working in our steering group to a first home game being played on Saturday, the 19th of November. Okay, I beg your pardon, the 16th of November. The first home game was announced by the football club to be the 9th of November. That was a week sooner than we were working to. Now, the Football League have to inspect the ground for Football League games, and it meant that there was not time for a Football League inspection. before that first home game. Okay. And as far as the actual provision of the size of the changing facilities, we were working on the assumption that the original clubhouse had burnt down. You might recall that, and that this was a replacement for what had been destroyed. If it was deemed a replacement, then 14 square metres was adequate for the changing facilities. When the Football League inspected the ground, they said, no, this is a brand new changing facility, so it had to be 18 square metres. So we felt we had a reasonable case, but it wasn't accepted by the Football League. So I don't accept the statement that this was, how could we not have foreseen this? I think it was a perfectly reasonable position to find ourselves in.
Councillor Cottam, sorry, Councillor McKinnon, you had a second
I'm happy
question.
for Jeremy to go ahead and
Okay, no,
come back.
carry on. Yeah, sorry.
Since May 2023, or basically since the first match was played, how many hours of football have been played on the Faraday Road pitch in total since then?
Chair, I'd have to come back to you on that. I can't give a definitive figure, I'm afraid.
Does Mr. Winstanley have an idea?
No, not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. Final question, I think, Chairman. I'm on the booking site for Faraday Road right now, trying to book it for a 90-minute pitch, for a 90-minute booking for an adult football game. And there is no availability on the website. And I've checked up until March. Is this pitch actually available to the public to book for football use at this point?
Thank you. Well, it's still in the process of being prepared. I think also you have to bear in mind that this is a grass pitch. Okay, it's not a 3G pitch. We have to be very careful about the number of games that are played on it. And as we said earlier, we can't give you a figure at the moment, but I think it would be quite reasonable for us to come back to the committee, if you're happy with that, Chair, with an answer to that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Chairman, final question for me. Is that a no then? The public cannot book this pitch at the moment? Yes or no?
At this precise moment, I think it would be difficult to book a match, a game right now. But that is something that is going to be changing as time develops. Yeah, it will be possible for the public to book these matches. But at the moment, we're working with the Newbury Community Football Group to establish that. So it's still ongoing at the moment.
Mr. Winstanley, I can see.
Yeah, I was just going to make the point that we're working with Newbury Community Football Group, but if you come and talk to us, Ross, we can have a look at that. And...
Yeah, just John want to know if the public are able to book this at the moment. That's all.
Through the Newbury Community Football Group, yes.
Right, so it does look, Chairman, that this amount of money that's been spent is not, certainly at this point, to benefit the wider footballing community at all, is it? It's to benefit Newbury Community Football Group and Newbury FC. We've just heard that for me to have a shot at playing on this pitch, I need to go through Newbury Community Football Group. And I think that puts a whole new light on this entire thing.
Councillor Foote.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If I can just respond to that. We've already been told in this committee so far that Newbury Football Club has to play at Hennig. We made it very clear when we were in the run-up to the election that we wanted Newbury Football Club to go back to where it was always playing, which is at Faraday Road. That's its spiritual home, right in the middle of the town. And that is what we're working towards. So all of this that we're doing is to get football back, that people can go along, spectators can go along and watch the football club play where they should at Faraday Road.
To get Newbury FC back to Faraday Road, not football in the community. But thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cottam.
I think I might also have to declare an interest as well, because I actually was Chairman of Recreation when we handed over the Newbury Football Club to Etchenwell when the previous team failed. So I have been involved from this for a long time, and I can make a comparison to Hennick. Hennick Field was basically finished, and it took 6 months to get the ground into a suitable condition for people to play. There may be issues with waterlogging, with stones. I don't know, but I'm just saying that, just recapping on what I have actually seen. But really, my speaking here is wanting to ask the officers a question to Paul Hendry. Basically, when you go out to quotation on these, so you're saying you actually have a list of approved suppliers?
For
By doing the works that you
preparing the pitch.
Yes.
We have a sort of a contractor that we have over a period of time. So Continental Landscapes, they prepare all our football pitches, and we also have an ability to call off individual pieces of work through that contract. So they've been through a competitive procurement exercise to provide a service over a number of years, and we use that contract. It's been through a competitive process, so we know the price is good, and that we've been through all the checks to make sure that their quality is to a required standard, and we can procure through that route.
Thank you, because I was quite concerned. Do you actually, they have health and safety policies and such? Because I had a look, we were talking about White Horse, and I went to see if they had any health and safety policies. They don't. They have no policies. I can actually, or quality systems or anything else. When I looked at Volker, they have a page, a PDF full of the actual levels of standards of site safety, of public safety. When my concern was the safety of not only the workers, but also the public and the pedestrians and people parking there. So you're saying that part of the decision is because they have those attributes?
Yeah, there's certain minimum requirements that we would accept as part of our, the procurement process. So if we were assessing a tender, we would have a price element and a quality element, and all of those checks and balances with health and safety, et cetera, will form part of that quality submission. And if they didn't fulfil certain minimum elements, they wouldn't be accepted as a contractor for the scale of jobs that we're talking about in terms of multiple year contracts.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pattenden.
Thanks very much. Mr. Winstanley, have Volker done this type of work before? Is it, within your experience for them to have done this type of work, so it was, normal for you to have approached them using the term contract?
Yeah, they're quite, it's, in terms of fencing and the ducting and the trenching that they carried out for us, yes, it's reasonably common. Not so much the fencing, but they do it, on our highways, etc. But certainly all the groundworks and the ducting, it's their bread and butter.
Got some questions myself, actually, if I may. Just going back up the document. There's one item that's missing. Sorry. Made so many notes on this, I've lost where I was. So, yes, at the top of the page, number 6, get there eventually. There's an item missing. So it talks about palisade fencing, but it doesn't say who supplied it or what the cost for that was. There's some missing information. Is that something you're able to fill us in on? Thank you.
The palisade fencing was supplied by Volker as well, Volker Highways. It's part of the same item, I think, as the other fencing.
Okay,
so it was just, I think it's just where it's gone over the page.
Right, thank you very much. My second question, it says that the total is £230,000. This paper has obviously been some time in the gestation, but it was actually published about a week to 10 days ago after the executive meeting, when Mr. Alan Pearce asked the leader, Jeff Brooks, a question about this. And the council leader actually said that the full costs were £395,000. And he listed in great detail all of the different items that that came to that final figure. So why is there a difference between the figure in the report, the 230, and the figure that the council leader gave of 395?
So the figure in the report that's been reported to Scrutiny is in response to the question that was asked about the spend last year. So that is the spend that was undertaken to date. I think when it was questioned, it was to date was February this year. So since then, there's been another amount of spend to prepare the pitch for league standard football. That has been excluded for this because it didn't form part of Mr. Morgan's original question.
Okay. And this is the problem with the papers and the order that they come through. I think the fact that they got a different answer a couple of weeks ago, this has been superseded by subsequent questions. But I think it does point out that we do need some more detail on the costs and the timescale for those costs. So I think if we could resolve this evening to ask for more detail on that, I think that would be helpful. Yeah. And one final question from me. Do we think that we could have done this at a lower cost if we hadn't had to work so fast to deliver the project?
I think that's very difficult to answer because we have these competitive processes to give us best value. So, you know, we procured Continental through a competitive process and Volker through a competitive process. I suspect with any procurement exercise, if you go to the nth degree, you might be able to, with hindsight, find a better supplier somewhere else or a cheaper one. And there's always a balance with any tender that we issue, that it's not always done purely on price, it's done on price and quality, and part of that quality can be the programme and the speed in which they deliver. So it's very difficult for me to say whether we could have delivered it at a better price, possibly, but I think in terms of the overall value and what we were trying to deliver, I think that was the best route, and I do believe it provided value for money.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No. Okay. Mr. Morgan, would you like to ask a supplementary?
Yeah, some of the aspects. Yeah, so many different aspects. I think the one thing that's become clear, and again, it's a point I tried to raise earlier in answer to Ross McKinnon's question to Nigel Foote here. The project objective and scope is crucial here, right? And if we'd have defined that, which is to get football back to the standard it was before 2018, which is step 2 to the facility, and a project plan designed to do that, it's never been about getting new BFC back there. That's never been the driving factor of it. It's about getting a football ground that can be used by the whole community and can be used to actually go up to step 1, step 2 for men's, women's, and everyone else. It's not about new BFC, never has been. It's about the facility. And to quote, you know, one of the great films, you build it, they will come. And I thought there was a commitment for that. And what we're lacking here, and why we're having this ridiculous debate, is because no one's defined exactly what we're trying to achieve here. And when I was part of NCFG, we had a 3-phase plan, which is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's all written down. All the objectives were clear. Now, you talk about the specifications regarding it's clear. The presentation we did back in May makes it quite clear.
Could you formulate this as a question, please, Mr.
The question is, the specification is there, it's in the public domain. If you're not specifying your project plan, your detail, of course you're going to make mistakes. There is a lack of project plan, there's lack of detail, lack of objectives. That's why we spent so much money on this and we've got so little back from it. And I say that from a point of strength here. I know all these details. I know what
what is your question,
please? My question is, do you not think now, after 18 months of messing about with this, the time is now to actually get a firm project plan with a firm project objectives to rebuild the football stadium back to what it was prior to 2018. That's the only way to get this project back on task. And that's the only way to get value for money. So my question is, do you not think it's time now to do that? To define your project objective and your end game? That's what I'm asking for. And I think that's a perfect valid question to ask the
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Foote, would you like to respond to that?
Well, yes, I think that there is a plan that we're working on, and I'm quite happy that you know there is a project.
But there's not, is there?
Sorry, Mr. Morgan. Sorry, please listen to the response.
It's not. You're kidding yourself, guys. Come on.
Okay,
That's all I have to say. And as I say,
Mr Winstanley, would you like to add anything to what councillor Foote has said?
I think the administration has got a very clear plan of what they want to achieve on that side.
well, share it
and
with us then,
Okay.
for God's sake.
Mr Morgan,
We've not
please.
seen it, have we?
We've suspended standing orders so that you've had an opportunity to speak. Okay, thank you.
I'm done here, God.
Okay. So, members, do we have anything that we'd like to ask for more information about? We said we wanted clarity on costs for each of the phases. And also councillor McKinnon's question about whether it's available for booking by the public. Councillor Cotton. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, proposer. Yeah, councillor Cotton. Seconder, councillor Reid. All those in favour? Yeah, okay. Fire away. Councillor Pattenden.
Yeah, just following up on, Councillor McKinnon and I had a little exchange about the pitch booking system, which he's right. You're not currently able to book a pitch for Faraday Road.
Okay.
I found you're also not able to book a pitch for Linear Park in Calcott, although Councillor McKinnon was able to show me that he could have booked a pitch at Hennick if he wanted to. So there's obviously a problem with the pitch booking system,
Okay.
which I think perhaps we might like to get the officers to investigate.
Okay. So that's two things then. So clarity on costs and phasing, problem with the booking system. Anything else? Councillor McKinnon?
Yeah, just following up on Councillor Pattenden's point, I think there may or may not be a problem with the booking system, but I think the answers we had from Councillor Foote and Mr Winstanley were along the lines of, no, this is not available for the public to book yet, unless I go through Newbury Community Football Group. I think that was what
Okay.
the answer was.
So we want clarity on that as well then?
Very much so.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, if you've got anything else to say on that specifically?
Well, thanks, Chair, if that's okay. Yeah, it's just that this is an ongoing process. So I would be quite happy at a future date to come back and obviously see how we're getting on with the booking process. And I would leave it at that. But it's certainly something we would be working towards, and it's an ongoing process.
Okay, thank you. Anything else that we'd like to ask for further clarification about? No, okay. So that's three different items. I don't think we need to vote on those three different items, but Mr Oliver would have made a note. So we'll ask for further information about that. Okay, thank you. I think it's helpful, it's healthy to take questions from the public because we are here to scrutinise things on behalf of the public as well and get them answers and ensure that the council is accountable and responsive. So thank you very much for your cooperation with that item. Great. Moving on to item 7, unregulated and unregistered placements. There is an appendix, a part 2 appendix with this. So if we wish to discuss the content of that, we will have to have a vote on excluding the public and the press and go to part 2. So please be mindful of that when you come to asking questions about this. If there's anything on the part 2, we will need to take that action. And without any further ado, I will hand over to Councillor Codling and Rebecca Wilshire to present on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. As Councillor Codlin's online, I'll just go ahead. So thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us to bring this update and information into scrutiny. We wanted to raise awareness around the use of unregulated and unregistered provisions and to provide an overview within this arena. So we know there is a national issue when it comes to provisions for children. And within the report, there is an exec summary that sets out law and legislation and what exists relating to these provisions. The use of unregulated and unregistered for children in care is complex and often controversial. It's an area of social care in the UK, and these provisions are contrary to the requirements of regulated framework, and they are used as a last resort and only as a last resort. And we have lots of other mechanisms around that when they are used. So I'm hoping the report gave a definition of what is deemed unregulated, which tends to refer to 16 and 17-year-old and placements that refer to that age group, usually semi-independent, where they're having some supported accommodation. And then there's unregistered placements that are, again, supported accommodation, but not necessarily having care provided. So there's two differences, and the law in some of that has only recently changed. So we do still have some supported accommodation, so 16, 17-year-olds that are in supported accommodation that are either still waiting to be registered or still going through that registered, or we're still wanting them to go through that registered provision. And then we have the under 16s, which obviously are our biggest concerns, because they certainly come with an element of care and not just a supported package. So again, hopefully the report will outline what that looks like for West Berkshire. We know it's a national issue. We know some of these provisions are certainly the high cost provisions. And we do put a lot of other resources around these to make sure that they're safe and stable. There's lots of reasons why we're in this position. So there is an increase in demand. So we do see high numbers of children coming into care. There is a serious shortage of provision, or the right provision for children that do come into care, which ends up us using more residential provisions than we would probably want around certainly fostering. And we do a lot of work here, which is positive in West Berkshire, around family placements and connected carers. In West Berkshire, the use of unregistered and unregulated, as I said, is not considered suitable. It is only approved at the highest. So Anne-Marie, as our exec director, is the only person that can approve that. Myself in her absence, and they are overseen on a very regular basis and have extremely high visiting ratios to see the children and the provision. So there is some checks and balances that are made when they have to, and we continue to always look for regulated provision when we do have to use these. There are obviously safeguarding concerns. They're not checked by Ofsted, so they do come with some other concerns that a registered provision might not have. They might also have a lack of consistent standards. We do find that some, when we have had to use them, do work with us very closely, and we have been pleased with some of the level of care. We just want them to get registered. So there's lots of things that we certainly have outlined in here in the hope to give you an overview of that. There obviously are legal implications for us using these provisions, and we do ensure that that process is put in place. The part 2 does talk directly about West Berkshire and our numbers and data and our children, hence it being in the private sector, but very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Councillor Codling or Anne-Marie Dodds online want to add anything to that before we go to questions.
I don't think there's much we can add to that, to be honest. We're in a very difficult area. It's very noisy. But if there's anything you need to ask us, we can do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. Not so much a question, really. Ms Wiltshire and her colleagues are to be commended. I have personal knowledge, both from carers, to use the word generally, and children young people who've benefited from it. It's a very difficult area. It's very worrying for elected members in particular, but all that I know tells me that we should be proud of our people, and I know that they will continue to be vigilant. Thank you, Councillor Dick. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you very much for that, and thanks for bringing this very difficult issue to us. It is very concerning, particularly when you read in, it's a 6.5 on 43, page 43, that the children who live in unregistered provisions are almost always those with the highest needs, that they've had to be moved from one placement to another, and they've ended up in these particular positions. I mean, are we trying to move for these places to be registered? I mean, what sort of work is going on there to work with these unregistered places or homes to actually get them registered? Is this to do with, do they not wish to be registered, or we haven't got the personnel to do it? You know, what work is going on there? I know we're working to increase our fostering families, and have we got the resources to actually promote that more? And you know, and also we talk about in the document about robust ways of ensuring that the children are safe in these places. Are we confident that what you're doing is robust enough? How frequently are these places visited? And what can we do to increase registered places? I can see the dilemma that the council is in, that you can't just leave children in dangerous circumstances. They've got to be placed somewhere. But I'm just wondering if there's any more detail about the work that's going on.
Yeah, really good questions and lots of work going on in that area. So they do tend to be our children with the most need, which means that other provisions, because there's so many children looking for different provisions, other provisions will have a lot of children waiting. So they do tend to be that, which means our robustness is, so they are, as a minimum, they're visited weekly. So our visiting matrix is very high, and that's just the social worker. So they will still have a family support worker or someone else within the health or school or whatever that looks like. But weekly, as a minimum, absolutely takes place. Some of the delay around those waiting to be registered is just backlog within Ofsted. So I think because there was a shift last year in the law, that I think there's just a lot of people that's put forward to be registered. So it's just them working through that. And with registration comes visits and references and lots of things. So some of those are progressing, and we liaise with Ofsted and we make sure Ofsted's aware of the ones that we have to use that we're waiting on. So we try and see if anything can be fast tracked. But until that, we do have some that haven't yet applied to be registered, and they are obviously our ones that are the ones that we wouldn't use, or we would want to move our children on from there sooner. So we're obviously more happier the ones that are at least in the process of being registered. And yeah, we continue to do our fostering. We're also looking at anything we can do regionally around collaboration. So there is a regional collaboration around residential that we're currently exploring, and that would mean we would have a more access potentially to residential provision that would meet our high need and high risk children. So there is lots of other things that we're exploring around different innovation to address this specific area.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Cotton.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers has asked my question and has been fully answered. Thank you.
Councillor Amatharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my question to as well, thank you for your report, although it's a grim reading, but it also gives a lot of assurances for us in terms of care. My questions are particularly on the unregulated one, because the unregistered one, I've got clarification, but unregulated ones, are we making sure as there are no foreign entities or companies based not in UK? What I'm trying to compare is, are they fully accountable in terms of making sure if there is any wrongdoing or any mishaps, we are able to secure the wellness of the children in care, also make them accountable? And number two is, I can see there are costs involved or regular follow-ups in terms of checks. Are they additional costs in terms of comparing to the regulated care service providers to these unregulated? And if there are additional costs, what would they be? And are they any additional reports or any feedbacks that can be given from extracted from these providers? Thank you.
Thank you. So there are higher costs associated. For sure. A lot of those are more regarding the level of need. So the children that end up here is likely to be a solo placement. So we might have a 3-bedroom house where a regulated would have 3 children in it. We would want a solo placement for these children because of their level of need, but they might need 2-to-1 staffing. So of course that comes with a higher cost. So they're definitely a higher cost associated with unregulated. And when they become regulated and those needs met, then more children can then enter that provision and brings the cost down. So ongoing work around that. Holding them accountable, absolutely. That it doesn't come with the same as a regulated provision, but we then regular visits, the QA, the framework's still there to at least ensure, and we're more assured once they have logged registration with Ofsted, because it means that they're moving in. We do have some that would still be considered unregulated to us, but they're registered with CQC. So they might not be registered for Ofsted, so it still comes with some regulation, but not necessarily what we would look for from an Ofsted perspective. And additional reporting is definitely there around our visits and our how we hold them to account around progress. And, you know, we do make sure our children are still making progress in those provisions. And if they weren't making progress, then even if we had to find another alternative in another way, we would find another alternative.
Thank you. Councillor Reid. Thank you. Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to echo Councillor Dick's commendation of the report. I think it's an excellent report. It sets out very well for me the predicament that we find ourselves, the service finds itself in, and the part two section brings that out fully. Just what a difficult challenge we have, and the high demands and needs of these young people. If we would all wish that we could instantly place one of our children, one of our young people, any of our young people, in an unregulated, unrestricted, unregistered setting as soon as we want, but we just know that's not possible. And this paper, for me, gives us assurance, gives members who are rightly anxious about this situation, give us assurance that you're doing everything you can to make sure that these people are looked after well.
Thank you. Councillor Pattenden.
Thank you. Yeah, it's heartening to hear how the service is operating. I'm wondering, and hopefully this doesn't impinge on a part two issue, but is there a need to use unregulated or unregistered providers who are outside of West Parks?
Yeah, sometimes. So sometimes some of them will be, they might just be on the outskirts of West Parks, but sometimes they do need to be, but sometimes that might be needed depending on what the risk is. So there will be some that might need to be out of areas. So yeah, in short, yes, some of them are. We'll always try and manage that with their schools, families, and where safe to do so. But yes, some are outside West Parks.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions. How do we compare with other local authorities with regard to the use of this provision?
So we're quite low compared to some local authorities. There are some that can use considerably more.
Okay, thank you. And it also says in 6.9 that it poses a legal risk for local authorities. Are you able to elaborate on what that legal risk is for us, please?
So the main risk is to Anne-Marie as DCS, which she'll always be pleased to hear. Yeah, so that they are unlawful placements. So the risk is mainly to our director of children's services around being able to be accountable for having to use that provision.
Okay. And have there been cases anywhere around the country where the Executive Director for Education and Children's Family Services has found themselves in quite a tricky situation legally?
Not that I understand. I do believe there might have been a DCS nationally that has been interviewed under caution when the law first changed via Ofsted. Okay. But I'm not aware of any prosecutions that's come out of it.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions on this item? No, nothing online? Okay, great. We don't need to take a vote on this. This was for information, unless we want to make any formal recommendations. No. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to officers. Thank you to Councillor Codling and to Anne-Marie Dodds online. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Oh, you have the next item. Yeah, sorry. Okay, well, welcome back from your 10-second break from the last item. Good, right, so swiftly moving on. Item 8, early intervention and family help. So this is for Councillor Codling and Karen Atala to prevent, is it Atala or Atala?
Atala.
Atala, thank you very much. I'm conscious there's quite a few slides for this. So if we could go through them at some rate of pace, I would be very grateful, because members have seen the slides already as part of the agenda pack. So yeah, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this was again just something to bring here to make sure people and to share some really good work in our early intervention. And what we do know around early intervention is if we get it right at that point, it makes a massive difference, not just on outcomes for children and families, but a massive difference on our demand and the services throughout the rest of our service. So what you've got in here is a real outline of what our early response hub delivers and what it looks like. It's been running for a little while.
Yeah.
So,
Can you expand it? Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I say of course. It's here for us. Oh, this one. Aha. There we go. Thank you. It's been up and running since 2009. It sits within our front door, so it looks to ensure we're getting into families as early as we possibly can. Very strength-based and very focused on relationships. So really thinking about the right help at the right time by the right service for the family. There's 8 different elements in our early response hub. So we have the triage, assessment, intervention. So they'll do some short-term work with families. We have our missing children, return home interviews. It's a statutory duty that around children that go missing. Our young carers sitting here, valuable bit. Reducing parental conflict, that's a new government, or has been, it's due to end, around trying to reduce domestic abuse and looking at conflict. My family plan workers, so again, early help, early intervention, and family group conferences, all sits within this bit. So it does a vast amount of work, very partnership-led. This slide just talks of some of the partners that is within that provision. And then I'm conscious of time, so I won't go through them, but there is some slides that will talk about some of our data. So looking at triage, and we'll see the increase that we're seeing in there, which is great. We want to see increase here. We want families to be coming through early intervention. So the more we can get here, we're hoping we will see a decrease in the demand in social care. The risk factors, this just talks about what they are. So again, mental health is one of our big areas, child mental health being it, but parental mental health is close. We're not surprised by that. We know nationally child mental health is a significant issue, and we see it not just through social care, but through our schools as well. This just tells us the family first assessments, and this is some of the interventions that's been completed or underway each quarter. So our data and our analysis of that is very frequent. And we just keep that under review to make sure what are our gaps, what is it telling us, what's our data telling us, to make sure that we continue to refocus the services that we've got. This is our young carers. We have 212 young carers in West Berkshire. This is we can see a slight increase each quarter in that. It's good news. We want people to come to us if they're young carers. We want to support them, so we want to continue to see that increasing. And we know there continues to be a lot of young carers doing amazing work. So early response, this just slide talks about us needing to get in earlier. There are financial challenges, we all know that. We know we end up supporting social care arena because of the demand and because of the statutory duties around it. But by us really implementing and focusing on early intervention, we can address some of that demand. And this year we have started to implement what we call family help model. So this is based on new government changes around legislation and us holding families that would normally sit in a statutory function. So child in need, section 17, terminology might be known, that can be held by highly skilled but alternatively qualified workers. And we've got a pilot that is testing some of this out, and we call it our family help model. This just shows the legislation that's brought about some of those changes. And we do welcome it. We welcome anything that gets us in that door to families much sooner. This just sets out that we want to be relationship focused, doing it with families, not to families, you know, being developing plans with them and preventing them ending up child protection, and certainly preventing them becoming child in need. This is our threshold document. It's very tiny, so I appreciate you won't see it. It's on the website, and it just sets out where some of those that pendulum of support really. So early help starting in the green and yellow. Obviously, level 4 up here is our red and our child protection. And our level 3 is where we sort of do some child in need work. But our family help model is very much starting to embed in there to prevent our families needing to escalate upwards. And this is some of the initial impact from that we're already starting to see. So what you can see is since April, so since this new family help model, we are seeing a decrease of the number of children that are progressing to short-term statutory assessment and intervention. And this is what we want to see. At the minute, and we will keep tracking these families to make sure that they don't come back. So we don't want people being re-referred and coming back. So we'll continue to monitor this. But at the minute, the impact that we're seeing is really positive. And we're seeing a reduction. So section 47 is our child protection inquiries. And again, we're starting to see a decrease in some of those coming through the door. Again, really positive for families. This one just talks of our numbers. We've got some positive family feedback. We're getting some really positive family feedback on the My Family Plan and on the approach that we're doing around My Family Help. And then most will know about our family hubs. So again, we have the early response hub, and then we have family hubs that work very closely in the community with families, again, delivering early intervention from parenting assessments, from parenting support, parenting classes to one-to-one work, direct work. It's a whole variety of very good partnership, Start for Life, 1001 days, 0 to 5, real early years focus. And we have 3 and a satellite one across West Berkshire. And again, we're doing work on how we bring that together with, as a whole, early help across West Berkshire. This slide just talks about some of the work that the hubs do. And again, the feedback from families is exceptional. And there's a real partnership engagement with our family hubs from young carers, breastfeeding support. We have the Emotional Health and Academy linked to that, which supports our children's mental health. And we have a number of NHS providers from midwifery all the way through to several different aspects that go in there. That's just number of the children that they're currently supporting across our hubs. And again, we're linking it closely in with early help and wellbeing. And this last slide is just some feedback that we've got from families that really do value the hub and what it offers them. I hope that was quick enough.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed for that. Great. Any questions from members? Councillor Pattenden.
Thanks very much. Yeah, interesting to hear. Is this a proactive service? Is my first question. And then secondly, I saw Emotional Health Academy towards the end, and I wondered also whether you work with Time to Talk and maybe even other organisations that are working in the same space, and how you integrate with them.
Yeah, so I would say our early response hub is more proactive at the minute, and we'd like to move in that space. I would say our family hubs are a little bit more, they're even earlier in that line of work, but I would say it's proactive. We want to get, but we do it still, there's still some things we could get upstream a little bit more on. So we want to look at those, and we'll do that around some gap analysis. Early help, mental health, yes. Talk. There's several that we used, isn't there?
Yeah, can I?
Yeah, please.
So I think the key about this is the innovation and the partnership and collaboration that we rely on. So early help is everyone has to play a part in early help. the workforce that we require is a workforce that is not just delivered through the council, but a workforce that's delivered within the community, within the voluntary sector. And the important part of early help is the links, the collaboration and the relationships that we make and build, whether that be with mental health services, whether that be with health service, whether that be community services that can identify sooner and quicker. We currently have partnered with 16 different agencies across our communities, and these are agencies that work with us because they see the benefits of early help, and those include all of the different mental health services, all of the different, you know, swings and smiles. So for the special education needs, etc., etc. We partner with many people to deliver early help. We couldn't do it without them, and certainly going forward, we would want to expand our footprint much wider than we have now, and that's an ongoing process, an ongoing work that we wish to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, Chair. I see there's a referred paper from the Early Intervention Foundation, Cost of Late Intervention, in the pack on page 89. There's a little bit that raised a concern. I'm hoping I've got the wrong end of the stick. A number of us cover rural areas, and actually second paragraph, last sentence. Rural areas are more likely to show lower levels of both late intervention spend and deprivation, while urban areas are more likely to show higher levels of both. And yet, when I have checked, and AI is fantastic for this now, really good. The ONS, Office for National Statistics, May 2021, deprivation in rural areas is more dispersed, which can make it harder to identify. So are we missing cases of where, you know, we're only getting late intervention, if any at all? So that's my first question. Rural residents pay more for healthcare, receive fewer services and earn less than those in urban areas. Healthcare in Rural Areas paper from the House of Lords Library, UK Parliament, February 2023. And also the final one from the Rural Services Network, RSN. Rural residents get about 14% less per head in social care support overall. So I think my concern is, are we overlooking rural deprivation and late intervention problems just because it's harder to spot them in rural areas and they're not coming forward?
Thank you. So the report that came, that was 2016. So I do think there has been some changes around how we work with deprivation or how we recognise it since then. Certainly certainly post-COVID. I don't get that sense here that we have. I think we have a good understanding of what our rural areas look like, but I do think we need to look at how we have a better presence in those, certainly when it comes to our family hubs and our early help, around how we're engaging out in our rural areas. But it's not something that we've identified here at this point.
I think we're all cognizant that there are significantly less healthcare workers that go out proactively to see young families, especially when they've just had a baby, and the pathway that they go through. I think certainly since my children were brought up, there was a significant amount of engagement from healthcare workers. I don't think there is that level anymore, which obviously concerns me. And that definitely concerns me for rural areas. We have a lot of social housing. When I knock on doors, you can see that there is levels of deprivation, and it would be good to understand what the cover is for those rural wards. I wonder if that's something we could look at in future in scrutiny.
Yeah, I think that's something that we should resolve to look at in more detail, definitely. Yes, please do.
It was just to say that obviously the report it's about a national picture as well, and there are individual places like West Berkshire. And one of the good examples I can give, because I think it's important to show that, is young carers. The numbers of young carers that we see have gone consistently higher. One of the big pushes in that was to identify young carers in our rural areas and we not only have we managed to do that from working with parishes, we also had to ensure that those young carers could then access the activities. Now, a lot of those activities, I have to say, we haven't been able to deliver, but we are innovatively thinking about a mobile activity bus in the future, which I'm just going to put out there now, just in the hope that we may get some support. But what we have done is we've, through people's goodwill, been able to actually get people use their cars, give these young people lifts in so they can access those activities in the same way that children and young people living in Newbury could. So we are very aware and we are very proactive and it's a situation that we want to improve obviously on, and we'll work on that. Thank you.
Okay.
I do wonder if that's something we could engage with parish councils a bit more, because it sounds like we're dependent on volunteer to be able to engage on that.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, we'll make a note of that. And it would be good to hear more about the mobile library, not library, sorry, the mobile activity bus. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you very much. And thanks for your presentation. A lot of good work going on. Early response is always very good, but even better is prevention. So I'll hop back a little bit to what Councillor Reid has just said about the need for families to be supported from the very beginning of the life of a child. And we all know the importance of the first 1001 days. So we're talking about pregnancy, midwives, health visitors. So I haven't heard them mentioned. I think I heard midwife maybe mentioned somewhere. We've got these hubs. Have we got enough of them? Are they where they're needed? Obviously, rural areas are struggling here. And are midwives and health visitors involved in these hubs? I sort of get the feeling that the health visitors are not so welcome into the family hubs as they used to be. I'm not quite sure what the situation is in now. How widely are you working with other practitioners? And, harking on back again to the first 1001 days, if you get work in there really early, that's midwives, health visitors, primary care, you're actually stopping problems reaching the stage where they need the involvement of children's services and social workers. So, please let's all work together to actually ensure our children have the best start.
Yeah, just really quickly. So yes, midwives, health visitors are all heavily engaged. Do we have enough family hubs? We would happily have more. And we are looking at what we can do for more, whether that's remote, whether that's having satellite, that would touch out. So there is still work going on around what that looks like. But we definitely have a good partnership across West Berkshire, and the hubs very much focus on the early years and 1001 days. So we're definitely we're in conversations whether there's more we could do, like registering children from our hubs. So again, we get them in early and they know what they can access from day one. So still lots of work to do, but it is a very positive picture that's starting to come. But yeah, there is more that we need to do around that area.
Thank you. Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that really helpful and informative report. Early intervention is crucial and successful. It's not a surprise to me. It's not a surprise to you, but it is in some other places. You cannot underestimate the improvement in the quality of life of children and their families. That's the future of our country. Great to see the impact graphs as well. You could commend that to some of your colleague officers, because impact is what it's all about at the end of the day. And I'm just hoping, this is an open question, that two gentlemen who are sitting close to the door so they can make a quick getaway will hear that money invested in your sector has impact, improves lives, and guess what? Frees up money for more brilliant work. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dick. Anything to say to that, officers? No. Okay.
Chair?
Yes, sorry,
Chair,
beg your pardon.
Can I respond to that? So yes, just yesterday I was on a call with a cross Berkshire initiative of investing in regarding preventative controls. So yes, we see this as being really key to reduce the costs which we bear in children and family services.
Great, thank you very much. I've got a slightly wider question about prevention and youth services. Do we feel that we are meeting our statutory obligations with regard to youth services? Because obviously that's a key part of our prevention work. Don't know if officers have got anything to say about that.
We have some work within social care, and we are starting to look at how we work closely with Berkshire Youth. So we know what they're delivering. We've got some sessions coming up where we're going over to work with them. So happy to bring something back on that in the future if you'd like.
I think that would be really good. Thank you very much. Yeah, good to hear that you're working with them. And apologies if this has been asked already regarding budgetary constraints. How does it work in terms of what you get from the council and what you get from specific government pots? Because I know there's a lot of frustration that you have to go to the government for a lot of money for all kinds of different things that the council does, and you never know what the future of those pots of money is going to be, and we don't have the sort of democratic control over it that we would have if we were just taking it from our own funds.
So we do have a number of posts that is funded through our Strengthening Families programme, which we know currently ends in March 2025. So that does bring some pressure. We are thankful that we are currently as a council looking at how that might be supported. So that is all being explored, but it does bring some additional pressure across the partnership because some of them posts are funded. So you're right, we do have a few that are grant led, which is a problem. We've seen some new stuff coming out this last couple of weeks from government. So hopefully that will follow with a little pot of money. And yeah, we'll watch that space, but it is an area we continue to work on closely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cotton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I welcome the news that we're looking to spend more because I think probably we have one of the worst budgets within this area of youth services, and I would sincerely like to see it improved. I realise that these cuts in the past were down to budgets and financial savings, but I think we now have to see that maybe they were the wrong way to go because we've seen now more trouble appearing later on in children's lives. And I would warmly welcome that the executive actually made a focus on this to try and restore the youth services to what they were maybe 10 or 20 years ago. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the officers if they think that we're doing as much as we can, or if we'd like, could do more, talking about budgets, for areas where we can identify early on in life. So considering there is a greater attendance now at preschools because of that funding, are we training up enough preschool or early years workers, managers in being Senkos and ELSAs? Is that then being linked up to make sure that GPs are taking their observations seriously, that they can then make referrals, for example, paediatric referrals, to go on to a further pathway to making sure that these children are getting the care that they require? I was just wondering if the officers could respond to that.
I think they'd always like more. It would be fair to say, I think there's still a lot of work we need to do across the partnership on how we make sure those pathways for some children are much clearer, and that they are not delayed in that process. So I think there is work to still do. I think we do exceptionally well with the resources we have from an early help intervention, but I don't know if Neil wants to add to that.
So in terms of your early years question, we're fortunate in West Berkshire to have some very good high quality early years provision, but we'll be aware of the pressure that's placed on that by the increasing, as you say, expectation of take up and parental opportunity to take that. And so we are working to build that capacity, but at the same time to ensure the quality remains high. And so, yes, we do work with early years providers around early identification and support for families as a whole and for the young people that they care for. So we absolutely do that. The other side of that, I think, is around family hubs. We've spoken about those considerably. Their focus is on 0 to 5 and pre-0 to 5. And they do a great deal of work, both targeted and open access, where families can access the support within the family hubs and get support around a whole range of things, or be signposted and work in partnership, as was asked earlier, with health colleagues. So there is an awful lot of focus at that early years stage. The family hubs, as we said earlier, we have 4 physical family hubs, but they work on them across the district. And as Rebecca said, there is always more that we could do with that, more that we could develop around the family hub system. But I do think the focus is absolutely right about identifying those families that can need support in its broadest sense, whatever that might look like and whoever may provide it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And sorry, Chair, I should have declared beforehand that my wife is actually a preschool practitioner. So
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Reid. On the issue of wraparound care, that is on our long-term agenda as Scrutiny Commission to have a look at. It's down on the forward planner as longer term, so it's not allocated to a specific timed meeting. But I think we probably ought to seek some more information from officers and perhaps from Anne Reid Dodds as well about when it would be a good time to look at that particular issue. Because we obviously want to do it in a timely way that's useful, so that we can give feedback to executive and to officers about that. We don't want to do it when the horse has bolted. So I don't know if you've got any views on when we probably ought to be looking at that, and Anne-Marie might want to comment on this as well.
Thanks, Chair. I'll have a conversation with Neil and Rebecca and we will come back to you if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, thank you. Any other comments on this, please? Okay, so in terms of action points, we want some more information about rural areas and some more confidence that they aren't being left behind. So if we can get more information from officers about that, that would be great. And the mobile activity bus, any other initiatives you're doing in that area would be great. I know that information isn't always very forthcoming in terms of the details. So, for example, with the budget consultation at the moment, there's talk about the Downland Sports Centre not being available for the public, but maybe some other activities instead. But there's not that sort of detail. So I think if we can get the detail from officers about these various proposals so that we can understand them better, and also to become ambassadors for them out in our own wards, that would be really good. And also some information about youth services as well. Was there anything else specifically that we would like to have down as actions? No. No. Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed, officers. And you really are free to go now, Councillor Codling, Anne-Marie Dodds. Thank you very much indeed for your contributions on those 2 items. Really interesting. Thank you. Great. Okay, on to item 9, medium-term financial strategy. So, Councillor Cottingham, would you like to present on this, please?
Yes, so I'll say a few words and I'll then hand over to Mr. Joseph Holmes as well. So the purpose of the report is really to set out the scene stroke context of the public consultation within the objective of setting a balanced budget for 25-26. As we're well aware, costs continue to exceed the rate of the annual council tax increase, which we're allowed to by law, just under 4.99%. We've talked about this evening the significant increase in children's social care costs due to various complexity of needs, home to school transport, and also special needs regarding SEND provision. We also see rising costs and demand in adult social care, surge in homelessness. We have growing pressure on the dedicated schools grant, which does have an impact on us from a general fund perspective, because we actually have to fund, in essence, the overdraft of dedicated schools grant. So that is likely to cost us around about £2 million next financial year to service that debt through interest and the MRP provision for that. That will also have an impact on our reserves. We are looking to maintain reserves at roughly 4 million. The target was to increase them, but the likelihood is the fact that to get to a balanced budget, we will have to find more and more savings. So this current financial year, we look to find 14.5 million. In context, we're projected to deliver just under 90%. However, with the low level of reserves, as we've talked about in this chamber on numerous occasions, there is this constant risk of requiring exceptional financial support. And indeed, we did have a meeting discussion with the department of MHLCG last week, just to, as I say, discuss issues which we're facing as a council. We also, as I say, from a medium-term perspective, look to improve our financial resilience over the longer term of getting our reserves up to what we believe to be a level which is I wouldn't say future-proof, but is consistent with our ambition of over 9 million. But obviously with that, we have to find more revenue and reduce our costs. The initial savings targets for 25-26 are roughly around about 12.1 million, of which 1.2 million are going to consultation within this document. And I think the last time I heard, we had over 1,100 folk giving us consultation. Last week was the latest figure. The consultation is due to finish next month, mid-next month, before the budget is then presented back to this chamber in mid-February. So, as I say, it's a real plea to the members of the public to go to our website to give their feedback on the items which are within this report. And as I say, I will then hand over to Mr. Holmes for further words.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Cottingham. So just a few further points to add. So the first is that when this report was written, it was right on the cusp of when the budget was announced by central government, and a number of items were highlighted in there. There was references to about an additional £600 million for local government in respect of social care. There was talk of additional money for homelessness as well and early intervention. We don't have any of the details behind that. So we are expecting a policy statement from the government in the coming weeks in advance of the local government finance settlement, which will likely be the week before Christmas. So it won't be until then that we have any exact figures on what the budget might well mean for West Berkshire. Certainly it looks like the government are going to look to change the formula. And again, we will see that and certainly into future financial years, it is likely the government will be looking at changes to the funding formula. Again, all of that will be consulted on from central government side of things. Just in respect of social care, just to give you some figures around how our budget has changed over recent years. So in 2017-18, we spent just over 55% of our core spending power was dedicated to social care spend. In the last financial year, that figure had risen to nearly 75%. So that just gives you an idea of the scale of increases in respect of social care, and I suppose gives you that feel for finding savings within other council budgets to help address that. So we have seen quite a significant rise, as has the rest of the country. But that just gives you some context, certainly in respect to the last item, on how much our budget goes towards social care.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Open it up to questions. Councillor Matharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll start with questions for the report. General questions, and then I'll pick up certain points. First to Mr. Holmes. Are we borrowing to fund these services at all?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So we borrow to fund capital expenditure, and that is the principle that we must abide by. The slight difference to that is the point that Councillor Cottingham alluded to, which is in respect of the high needs block deficit. At the moment, that is getting financed through the general fund. So there is becoming a real cost to the council through financing that deficit. And as that deficit grows, that that financing cost increases.
Thank you. And then just a question on the deficit. I'll keep to the deficit because that's the core crux of this report, isn't it? Are we factoring in the unfortunate increase in the NI, employers NI in this? I know you mentioned this report was prepared before the budget. So is there more deficit we are looking at?
So again, thank you, Councillor. We need to see what comes out in this policy statement in the local government finance settlement. So in respect to the council itself, it's fully expected that, I think government said this already, that we will not have to pay, or we will get some contra entry for those national insurance increases. Where it was certainly, and again, this depends on what comes through from government statements, where there will certainly be an increase in costs will be for many of our suppliers, and the majority of the council's money is spent on supplies and services. And so we will need to assess at that point what the impact on the budget will be through an additional costs, which are then reflected back to the council.
Thank you. Just two questions on the report itself. Page 113 on the collection fund deficit, 1.7 million, and 114 6.3E for the capital financing cost deficit. So I'm touching upon the deficit. I can understand the deficit arising out of funding for care services, but these two deficit items looks to be something of, it says capital financing cost deficit, and then collection fund deficit. Can we avoid that in this current budget? And final question, sorry, I'm taking a lot of time. It's a general question. I asked this question from last year as well. Are we looking to issue community bonds to finance, not for the services, but from a capital perspective to issuing some community bonds? Yeah, that's the questions from me.
Yeah, so thank you through your chair, Councillor. So I'll go in reverse order. So yes, the council is looking at issuing community bonds in the future into the new financial year, and have been in discussion on that. Some of that will depend on what the prevailing market rate, etc., is, but we are certainly looking at that. And then in respect of capital financing and the collection fund, so we can't avoid the collection fund deficit. So the collection fund deficit arises from the difference between how much council tax and business rates we thought we would get when it was set in previous years as to what the outturn was. So that is a real figure that we need to account for. On the capital financing side of things, a lot of that is driven through additional borrowing costs. So as interest rates have risen in recent years, that has become a larger and larger figure. And it wasn't so long ago, the amount we're setting aside there was initial, say £500,000 to £1 million, but additional interest rates have a much higher cost to us. That figure can come down into future years if the council didn't have a council-funded capital programme. This paper is not about the capital programme, but again, for when you are looking at the final budget, when that comes back through in February, how much council-funded capital programme exists, has an exact correlation to what that figure is in the future.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cottingham, did you want to come back on any of those questions?
Yeah, it was just a small point regarding the need to borrow. So there is an additional aspect regarding adult social care. So where we have someone coming into care and we have a charge over their property, which then gets repaid in future years. So obviously we're having to bear upfront that cost and pay, and then we may reclaim it in future years. We will reclaim it in future years. So yes, there is a short-term borrowing in that particular scenario.
Thank you. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got three questions on the items that are up for consultation, Councillor Cottingham and Mr Holmes. Firstly, the general proposal to increase fees and charges, does that include parking charges? So I know the parking charges recently have gone up. Is there going to be a double whammy for car parking?
So as part of this specific proposal, no, that doesn't include car parking in there.
Thank you very much. Secondly, I'm looking at the consultation website for the proposal to turn off street lighting between 12 and 5. And when residents access this, this page, they are told that evidence from Essex County Council suggests this doesn't lead to an increase in crime. Further academic studies from UCL and, strangely, the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine also backs up this proposal. Nowhere on that website does it include comments from Thames Valley Police, who are dead set against this proposal and are adamant that it will increase crime and the fear of crime. Now, I think it's dreadful that you've quoted studies which are in favour of this proposal, but you haven't included the very specific and very public comments from Thames Valley Police, who I think know a bit or two about what causes crime and the fear of crime. Do you not think that's a little bit strange? And if so, can I request that those comments are linked to provide an unbiased set of evidence, and perhaps the answers to this consultation to this date should really be disregarded when you're considering what to do?
Yeah, so I think part of the evidence going on there is factual evidence. So I must admit, I haven't seen the feedback come from Thames Valley Police. Is it factual, or is it, as you say, the fear, but I think from a balanced perspective, yes, we will look to get Thames Valley Police feedback on there in the context which it's given.
Thank you very much. And finally, on the downland, oh, sorry, Mr. Holmes.
And again, I suppose, through Chair, I suppose that is the purpose of the consultation as well, is to elicit some of that feedback that we receive from partner agencies through the process.
Well, I take that point, but most of the responses are going to be from residents, are they not? And when you have evidence pointed to by the site, you've got 3 links there, which back up the proposal. None against the proposal. I think residents would see this as being very biased and not an impartial consultation whatsoever.
Okay.
But I think we've said you will consider my suggestion.
Yeah, can I just ask for clarification on that? When we go out for public consultation, do we go to all of those bodies actively and say, we are doing a public consultation, please take this opportunity to respond?
So yes, the consultation will be shared with other organisations and other bodies. I will pick up though the specific point around, I mean, the Police and Crime Commissioner has made a response during the consultation period, so you would have thought that Thames Valley Police are aware, but we will just pick up on that.
Yeah, again, Chairman, they may well be aware of that, but I think when a resident is looking at this, one of the things they're going to be thinking about is, will this increase crime, or will this increase the fear of crime? It's all very well getting one consultation response from the police which says yes, it might, but the residents are going to be influenced by the 3 pieces of evidence which say no, they don't, and I don't think that's good enough.
Yeah, I think, as you say, from a question of balance, through the chair, it is appropriate that we get all stakeholders within West Berkshire area to give their feedback and their opinion as well.
Okay, well, I think through you, Chair, we'll look forward to perhaps seeing that consultation amended. And finally, thank you very much for those answers. Finally, on the proposal to shut down Downlands Leisure Centre. Downlands Leisure Centre had 4,500 visits last year. 5 jobs, part-time jobs, but 5 jobs are dependent on it. And to save £30,000 per year, you're proposing closing it. Do you not think that residents might find it a bit perverse that you're suggesting closing a leisure centre with 4,500 visits a year and 5 jobs dependent on it to save 30 grand when you've already spent 230,000 and counting to benefit one football group?
So there has been a question over the number of visits being made by the general public. I think we have got some stats which give a different answer compared to members of the public who are fully paid compared to school children visiting as well. So my understanding is that the sports centre will remain open for school children, but looking to remove to the general public, which I think my colleague, Councillor Foote, has got more detailed analysis on the number of adults in effect who are members of Downlands Sports Centre who are actually fee paying going to the actual centre. I think it's a lot less than the number of visits which you indicate.
Well, thanks, Councillor Cottingham. I mean, I've quoted the 4,500 from the consultation website itself on this. So from the consultation site, from July 23 to June 24, attendance at the centre amounted to 4,488 visits. Now, to save 30k a year and lose 5 jobs, those 4,500 visits can go, but there's only 11 people in a football team. Do you see the point I'm trying to make here?
I do, and I'd question the fact that you're saying 5 jobs are costing 30k. If that's what's in the consultation document,
I'm
struggle to
consultation.
see. Yeah, I struggle to see. So that's something which we just need to get our heads around to see that, as I say, that is truly the impact of doing this. That 5 jobs will go.
Well, this is a slightly concerning pattern in that Councillor Foote did not have the confidence of his own figures earlier on, about 230,000. When quoted a different figure, you said, oh, we need to get some clarification on that. We're now hearing we need to get clarification of figures that have been robust enough to put on the consultation. They're good enough to put in front of residents to get their opinion. But we're now seeing executive members running away from them tonight.
And they've informed their decision.
And they're going to inform the decision. That's really quite poor.
Councillor Foote, could I ask you to remind me of the name of the officer who's dealing with the down school and the gym? Because they did send me some figures, but because I can't remember their name, I can't find the figures. But I will pull them up because they are pertinent to what Councillor McKinnon's just mentioned.
Yeah, you might need to get in touch with Jude Thomas.
Okay, I think it was somebody else. Because I think I had a figure of 9,000 something. Because I know at the last executive, we were told it was only 2 people. And it was either 5,000, like Councillor McKinnon said, or it was 9,000, but it was a significantly higher figure. And my understanding is that is just for public use, so that doesn't include the school use.
I think the figure of 2 referred to membership. Right. As far as I'm aware, from everyone active, gave us those figures, I believe. I mean, that's from memory, but I think the 2 referred to active members of that leisure centre.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cottingham, have you got anything else to come back to Councillor McKinnon? No, okay, thank you. I will come back about the down school in a minute. Councillor Wollaston, thank you for your patience. I will just go through members in the chamber first, if that's okay, and then come back to you. I had Councillor Cottam next.
Thank you. Yeah, a blue light went flashing in my mind as soon as I read the turning off the streetlights. And yes, I actually read through that and saw that there were actually objective reports on this. Now, I'm sure the police have a subjective view of this, but do they actually have factual evidence? Because at the moment, the factual evidence seems to say that there isn't an increase in crime, because I'm actually very concerned, and I would be very interested in receiving further information from the police, because it is a worry. It immediately occurred to me when I saw that, and so yeah, and it is. Yes, you're quite right. We should have had maybe the police come in on this as maybe a shall we say, comment. It is amazingly difficult to see this, but I do understand where the executive is, because where else do you make the cuts? There are some very painful. Really, that's what you got? Gosh, wow. Okay. Well, would you like to come back on that?
I think, as Councillor McKinnon knows through the chair, that we're talking, not comparing like we'd like, we're talking one is capex, the other one is revenue, and the capital expenditure for the football club comes out of next year's budget from a funding perspective, but the total cost isn't directly comparable.
Thank you for that clarification. Now I'll continue. Basically, I'm very sad to see the situation also that the Downs is in. I mean, it was one of my projects. It was a marginal area because it's not a large population there. And I'd hoped that the private company that we put in to manage this would actually get more people through. I don't think we can take a decision on here because there seems to be some doubt on the actual figures for the actual footfall through there. But it was a joint venture with the school, and it was actually meant to actually support the school because they had this facility which we could use not only for the school but for the public. So is there another way of helping the school to actually keep going with what they've got, so they've actually got some income from that? So it's a question I would ask.
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. A couple of points. So I suppose on the specific proposal, there have been discussions obviously with the contractor around this, and it does have relatively low usage compared to many of the other sites. I think more widely though, from a decision-making point of view, final decision on this is for councillors at the end of February. So this is the consultation that we're highlighting here. No decisions are being made tonight or in the coming few weeks. This helps then to inform those final budget papers once we've got the local government finance settlement and everything that will entail, we hope, and what that means for the final budget. So this is all around that sort of consultation exercise to understand these proposals more and what the impacts of those proposals could be, to then present back to members, and it's the full budget's coming back through here in early February.
Thank you. I think gist of what I was trying to say is maybe the school could continue this facility on their own. If it's set up and running, maybe they could actually make some funding out of it by employing some of the staff that are already there. Just an idea that I'm bouncing back. Thank you.
Right, I've seen a few hands, but I will ask a couple of questions myself, if that's all right. I will start with the Downs very, very briefly, because I don't want to talk about this too much because it's only one of the items that are on in the budget consultation. But it did say in that paper that it's necessary for anyone who uses the sports hall to drive to the facility. And I made the point at executive that is not the case. There are 639 houses in that village, all within walking distance of the sports hall. There are also planning applications pending for another 400 houses. So you're going to have more than 1,000 houses with people who are capable of walking to the school. And as Councillor Reid mentioned earlier, we need to be mindful of the needs of rural communities. And also it concerns me that I don't think we've made it clear in the consultation that the hours that facility is open to the public are much, much shorter than the other facilities. So I think it's something like a quarter or a fifth of the hours, for example, that the Northcroft Leisure Centre is open to the public. So like the comment that Councillor McKinnon made about the police, I'm not sure that we're giving a fully rounded picture about the impact and comparing like with like and giving people all of the contextual information they need. But I will leave that with you because I don't want to keep labouring about that particular issue. When it comes to the extra financial support that councils are asking for, obviously Slough have had difficulties. How many of these councils are small unitaries? Because we're obviously very conscious that as a small unitary, we have got to provide a lot of services. We can't get the economies of scale that other councils can get. We've got a lot of staff vacancies, etc., etc. So if you could sort of elaborate on that a bit, do you think we are in trouble? Do you think small unitaries in general are probably in more trouble than other councils?
Thank you, Chair. On that wider point around those councils who requested exceptional financial support, the vast majority of those are upper tier authorities like ourselves. And then even within that list, quite a few are smaller unitary authorities, but not exclusively. You've got Birmingham City Council in there, which is kind of the biggest local authority in the country. But certainly it's very, very well represented with unitary authorities, some of which are slightly smaller than others. So that this is where the pressure is, because we have all of the range of services of council. So we have both, the housing pressures as well as home school transport, social care pressures in there as well. I suppose to your question around, how close are we to requesting exceptional financial support? We have the lowest levels of reserves of any council in the country. So just in itself, therefore, we are at significantly higher risk than if we were a council sitting on 10 times the level of our reserves. You cannot get away from that position. The government did announce last month that the cost of repaying exceptional financial support, it did have a premium on it of about an additional 1%. That premium has now been removed. We wait and see if there's something in the policy statement from central government around the future of exceptional financial support, or the flexible use, or the further flexible use of capital receipts into the future.
Okay. Thank you. And just a final question from me. On page 114, it says further savings proposals identified 5.5 million and the review is in progress. Do you have a timescale for when Scrutiny might know more about that review?
Yeah, so you will see, Chair, you will see the full list of savings proposals when those come through to you at the start of February.
Okay.
So be there.
That'll be that. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor McKinnon.
Yeah, just carry on. Thank you, Chairman, for letting me come back. And apologies to Councillor Cottam for interrupting me earlier on. Just going back to what Mr. Holmes was saying earlier on about how we're not making a decision tonight, it's going out to consultation. Yes, but that's the point. The consultation needs to be informed and unbiased. And to hear tonight that we're slightly concerned about the accuracy of some of the figures that have already gone out, being quoted to residents as part of a consultation, means that the validity of the consultation responses needs to be called into question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. Probably people who are used to calibrating my questions and understanding that tend to go to risk and resilience first. So I suppose the question is to Councillor Cottingham first is, what's the risk that, as this is a medium-term assumptions, inflation and tax changes, things like employers' national insurance, what is your feeling? What do we think could happen around in those areas?
So, as Mr. Holmes alluded to, that as far as we're aware at the moment, the indications are that the recent increase in employers' national insurance, local government authorities will be exempt. Regarding inflation, it did pick up from 1.7% to 2.1%. One of the, I suppose, unknowns for us is the knock-on effect of national insurance increases to care providers, so third parties. They are not, the indication is they're not exempt. So we were able to have a settlement with them last year, which wasn't inflation busting. However, what's happening is that obviously there's increasing demand and decreasing supply, and the laws of economics are once demand goes up, prices do tend to go up. So we're doing our level best to make sure that we are negotiating with our care providers, that especially in adult social care, that we're not having inflation busting settlements. One thing which we've been pressing the government, and I think the government have woken up to, is the profiteering in children's family services. So a lot of the monies which we've seen increase, we're funding hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds from outside of the UK who have moved into this particular area. There is one particular provider which has a very similar turnover to our revenues which we generate, and they have a bottom line profit, retained earnings profit, of getting on for nearly 30%. So it's between 25 and 30%. That's to the bottom line. So quite clearly, there are organisations out here who are profiteering through, I suppose, through children who need this specialist care. So something which we're putting great pressure, I think all local authorities are, to get more regulation, in this area, more competition. And as I say, there is always going to be, I won't even say a black swan event, the fact that if we have children who suddenly need this specialist care, it will put a great deal of pressure on us, especially when we only have £4 million to play with as our reserves. But I would say we will never do anything to put any child at risk. If we do need to go into exceptional financial support to support children, that will be the policy of this administration. We'll never scrimp and save doing the right thing for our children and adult social care.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cotting. Just to follow on that, and I think I got the statistics right when Mr. Holmes opened the talk, that from 2017 we went from 55% social care covering our budget to last year 75%. So that's roughly over 7 years. Do you see there to be a risk? You know, I'm drawing the graph in my head. Unless the government does get hold and really make sure this is a fair market out there, that we could be close to 95, if not 100%, and just a social care providing organisation.
Yes, so thank you, Chair, through you, Chair, Councillor. Back in the start of the last decade, there was something called the graph of doom, which probably looked like the graph that you were trying to describe. And it's, you know, the figures for us, okay, we started from a lower base, so 17, 18, we spent 56% of our budget on social care. Similar authorities was at 64%. Now similar authorities are at 75 and we're at 74%. And so that graph has in effect started to become reality now, that as you say, if we continue at this level in 7 years' time, we'll nearly, as you say, be at 100% of our spend on social care. And that just, you know, highlights all the range of pressures that have been discussed tonight around the costs of delivering good levels of social care to our residents.
Thank you. Rather worrying statistic.
I will bring in Councillor Wollaston at this point because I'm conscious he's been extremely patient. So I'll break with convention and go over to a non-member, as it were, and then come back to members in the chamber. Councillor Wollaston.
Councillor Wollaston on mute.
Thank you for letting me speak. Finally, my understanding is the council has borrowed £25 million from the PWLB. I still don't know exactly what it was borrowed for, but it's incurred an interest rate of 1.75 million plus. And I can't see anywhere in these papers see where it's going to be repaid, because it's only for just over a year. So that's £25 million to find to be repaid. Could someone perhaps explain it to me?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So that loan that we undertook, it has been repaid at the moment. So it's included in that overall capital financing charge. We have an underlying borrowing need, which goes up every single year. So every year that we have a council financed capital programme, we have an increased borrowing need. When the papers come through to scrutiny, if you'll see it in the Treasury Management papers, we have something called the capital financing requirement. I'll highlight it now. This is a red line, but I'll take you through that graph. Then beneath that is a sort of big grey line, which sets out the amount of money that we have borrowed to date. And we are always borrowing for capital financing purposes, but also, as Councillor Cottingham alluded to earlier, now the high needs block has got a deficit that is included within our financing requirement. So you will start to see that line going up quite steeply. And as again with some of these percentages, we'll share when we come back next to scrutiny some of the implications of that increased high needs block deficit and what the financing of that deficit is meaning for the overall council's position.
Sorry, Chair, can I come back just once?
Yep.
I don't think you've answered my question actually, because £25 million was borrowed. I've still not been informed of what it's been spent on, and it's got to be repaid because you've only borrowed it for a year. And you get £1.75 million of interest in the process.
Yeah, so the policy at the moment is to go for the short-term borrowing as interest rates still remain high. Once they start to fall, we will then go back into the market for more longer-term borrowing. So you're actually, in essence, reprofiling the borrowing requirements, ones which mature, but we need to have, as I say, borrowing to fund the capital expenditure program, plus the overdraft on the high needs block as well. So there are various reasons why we're having to borrow money. Also from a working capital perspective. So there are good reasons. As I said, we've discussed regarding from both the capital expenditure, but also from making sure that we're having to fund the overdraft on the high needs blocks, which is going to be 17.5 million by the end of this year. Yeah, exactly. Which is going to cost us £2 million next year just to fund that overdraft on the high needs block.
That's fine. The government doesn't extend the that out.
Well, they are still kicking that can down the road, aren't they? So I think there's various figures which I've seen across the country that this is a 3 to 4 billion overdraft, which is off balance sheet, which local authorities are covering. Something will have to be done over it, but that's a question for someone at Whitehall to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to come down to small numbers as a humble ward member and talk about something dear to your heart, because you mentioned it already in the wrong context, and that's the mobile library service. And yes, I have been lobbied about this. And here we are, we're worried, we hear about rural issues, we're worried about rural isolation, we're worried about unnecessary car journeys into the towns and conurbations. Of course there are buses, but hold on a minute, only if you go on a Tuesday and come back on a Thursday, so that's no good. We're talking about here some of the most vulnerable people in our community. They paid their taxes all year, all their lives, and just when they need a little bit back from the system, it seems to be disappearing. Now, I understand it's just a consultation, but of course, when things go on consultations, they're trying to stay on consultations, and it is a small amount of money, but it will have a big impact on the quality of the lives and the little communities that have formed around this bus. It's not good enough, of course, for me to say this isn't right, because you've underlined the size of your problem. So here's something to think about. It doesn't need to be in the consultation. Collaboration with other unitary authorities is a simple, straightforward economic way of saving, and if you do it properly, improving the quality of services. And that's something that the council has dabbled in over the years. I'm aware of that, but I think that's an avenue. By your own admission, given the numbers that you gave us earlier about where we come in the various league tables, it's something you've got to do, and you've got to do it quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Cotton.
Yeah, so very much take on board, Councillor Dick. Thank you, Chair. So where we've looked at this is actually to significantly improve the service which we're providing. So what we're proposing is that people will get face-to-face, door-to-door visits. So you talk about the fact that vulnerable people, in fact, the way in which the mobile library works at the moment, I think there's one particular village where it has to park outside of the village. So it means that people have to walk to the actual library. So the accessibility of it isn't as good as it could be, especially compared to a service where we are looking to have people visit face-to-face, talk to the individuals who use this service to get a gauge of what type of books they like to borrow, and then have a discussion with those individuals. So it'll be very much a face-to-face service, one-to-one, rather than, as I say, a vehicle which is probably coming to the end of its economic life going across, as I say, West Berkshire as a whole.
Chairman, can I just come back quickly on that? Thank you for that, Councillor. No, I'm not having that at all. If I want to choose a book, I want to look at some books. I don't want to talk to somebody who might have read a book or maybe knows a bit about books. And you're talking, if I've read it properly, about volunteers, not professional librarians, not people used to working in libraries. You're talking about volunteers who might turn up at the odd house. Please don't smooth over the issue here with remarks like that. There's a real need here, and I'd like you to think about it, and I'd like you to talk about collaboration. If not now, at another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you. I mean, so I'm just going back to the unsustainable rising cost of social care. And I know obviously we share this with other local authorities, and this might not be considered a very helpful comment, but I know a lot of local authorities think it's just not appropriate for us to be bearing the cost of this unsustainable rise, which is just going to go on, that it really is up to central government to take on this and to control it and organise it. It's just too much for us, and it's not sustainable. I mean, I wonder if there's any lobbying going on, whether you're working with other local authorities to actually try and approach government. I mean, it's probably a thankless task, but I just wondered if there's a recognition among you and other local authorities.
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. We are discussing this with MHLG, as Councillor Cottingham referenced. We've been speaking to them and have been for over a year now. We are also making direct representations, or will be shortly, to central government, and have done in the past. The provisional finance settlement will come out as well, and we will respond to that accordingly too. And also we have various informal meetings with my counterparts as well, where we highlight these issues. So and then you have people like lots of sectoral representatives like the Local Government Association, the county network, district network, who are all highlighting these issues. So across the sector, people are trying to raise these issues for government to respond to.
Thank you. Councillor Foot, I saw your hand. Did you want to say something?
Yes, thanks, Chair. My hand was sort of hovering because I'd just like to come back and respond to Councillor Dick's comments about the home delivery service. I'd just like to inform him that the way it works is people select their book online. The resident chooses the book, not some person that is telling them that this is a good book that they've read. So it's the resident that chooses the book. There is the opportunity for the volunteers to sit down, engage with that person. So it's something that can help with rural isolation. And these are things that we're exploring, Chair. As you probably know, there are moves afoot for a community hub, a pop-up library pilot out in Compton. And we're looking at these, and like any sort of evaluation, we will take away the data. And we've heard at this scrutiny committee tonight from Ms. Wilshire and the work that they've been doing with children's social care. For example, she was talking about family hubs. This is all a model where we can actually look at going out into communities. And although perhaps the days of the mobile library have come to an end, if the vehicle is at the end of its life, which it is, then there are other things we can look at. So I just wanted to come back and thank you for allowing me to do that, Chair, just to respond to that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I've got a few extra questions, if I may, sorry. Page 112 at the top, there's a chart of various items of income. A lot of them don't change for the next 4 financial years. Are we making an assumption that those monies will not increase? And if it ends up being the case that they do, then that's a bonus.
Thank you, Chair. The reason for that is because we expect from 2026-27 there'll be a fair, it's called a fair funding review, where government is looking at its funding amounts. Our assumption is it ends up the same as it is at the moment for West Berks, and I can't really make any other assumption than that. It could be better, it could be worse, until central government says something about that. If I put in figures which, you know, showed a massive loss of income, then that would drive us down one position. If I assume that we're going to get loads more money, then we'd sit here doing something else. It is an impossible one to forecast. We hear noises from central government, but until something comes out, anything I put in there is going to be wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And in 6.5, the proposals for the budget consultation with the proposal to ask people with a band G or band H property if they'd be prepared to contribute extra money for non-statutory services. Do we know what proportion of houses in the district that represents? And what kind of value of house are we talking about? Just so we can get a sense of, you know, how viable might this be? Do we think many people might take us up on this?
Do have that figure. I'm desperately trying to find it in my email, so I might have to come back to you in just a second. We're basing it on the scheme that Westminster Council put in place about 6-7 years ago, and of course it could apply to all bands as well. Any band is able to contribute if they so wish. If we take this forward, we were just looking initially at bands G and H. I'll just try and have a look for that exact figure in a second.
Whilst Mr. Holmes is looking at this, is that other aspects which is in the news at the moment, inheritance tax. So if you are able to gift monies to a charity which it isn't beyond our capability of setting up a charitable foundation, you actually can save inheritance tax. You can reduce your tax liability by, I think, 5 or 6% off the top of my head. So there is good reasons for tax planning purposes. As I say, for inheritance tax, rather than giving to a central fund, you can actually gift money away locally to, as I say, to ourselves, which we set up the appropriate tax benefit. We have had a previous legacy. One of the first things which Mr. Holmes briefed me on when I took office back in May last year was the fact we had received a legacy from a local resident.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, thanks for fitting in there, Councillor Cotton. So the figures, just under 8% of our bands are sort of bands G to H.
Okay, so 8% homes. And do we know roughly what kind of price of home, what value of the property would be, very roughly?
Well, of course, all of this is based on the 1991 valuation. It's on our website. I've forgotten the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's that X percentage of a bandy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it would be interesting to see what sort of take up we get on that then. Any other questions on the budget, colleagues? Or the medium-term financial strategy, I should say, to be accurate. Right, in terms of any recommendations, I've got here that we need to get some more information around the consultation and whether or not it's too late for us to actually amend some of those documents that are online. So that pertains to the police and the study that Ross mentioned, and also the Downs School as well. I did have communications with one officer, I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but she did say that she would change the Downs document and take out the reference to car use and the fact that people already have to drive to be at the school. So it would be good for us to get clarification, I think, on whether that can be changed before the budget consultation deadline or whether we're stuck with the documents we've got online. And are there any other recommendations that councillors would like to make on this item? No? Okay.
Can I just say one thing is that in the ideal world, we wouldn't have any consultation. I think we're just in this sad fact of life, that the fact that monies are tight, we're at tough financial pressure, and we're trying to find everything we possibly can to have a balanced budget and stop us going to exceptional financial support or even worse.
Okay.
So it's not something which we take a great deal of pleasure in doing.
No, absolutely. I mean, bearing in mind we're still a month away from the deadline for the budget consultation, though, will it be possible for us to make some amendments to those documents to give the members of the public a bit more context?
Yeah, we can have a look at some of those, see if we
Okay.
can update.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you could get back to us fairly urgently about that, just to confirm whether or not you've been able to do that, that would be great. Thank you very much indeed, Mr Holmes and Councillor Cottingham. Thank you. Good. Okay, moving on to item 10, task and finish group update. So as members will be aware, we have started to have meetings of the Sports Hub task and finish group. It met a couple of weeks ago. So members of myself, Councillor Reid, Councillor Cotton, Councillor Marsh and Councillor Dick. We are working our way through our terms of reference. We've got 7 objectives altogether. We looked recently at determining whether the Sports Hub project was value for money, and also determine whether the project would have delivered on the council's strategic objectives. Meeting 2 is on the 10th of December, and we will be looking at whether the project was well managed and also the apparent inconsistency of information that members were given when we had to decide on the planning applications for the Sports Hub. So we have 7 objectives in total, and we will work our way through those in 4 meetings. We've got a 3rd meeting at the start of January. I don't think we've set the date for the 4th meeting yet, but hopefully February, March time, we will be ready to report on that particular topic. I don't know if members of that task and finish group have got anything they'd like to add. No, okay. And then obviously we've got
summary.
Thank you. And then obviously we've got the project management task and finish group, which will follow on from that. And one of our actions was to look at whether to add a 3rd project to what we're already looking at, which is Care Director and iTrent. I suspect there'll be a lot of lessons learned from the Sports Hub as a project. And we've heard about Faraday Road this evening. So I'm sure as time progresses, the terms of reference for that project management task and finish group might evolve, let's say, to take on board what we've discovered from the other meetings. Yeah. Okay, good. Has anyone got any questions on that?
More of a sort of point, if we can get a list of projects that are completed and also completed their lessons learned as well. I don't think we should also just look at projects that failed, but sometimes successful projects, because taking on those positive points and building on those are really important, because people have careers, they move away, and they often take those little techniques and tricks and things with them.
Yeah, okay. We'll take that as an action then to think about other projects and lessons learned. Yeah, very good. Excellent. Okay. Moving on to item 11, Health Scrutiny Committee update. We have, of course, now got Councillor Vickers on this commission, which is great. And usually I would do a verbal update at this point, but we have the pleasure of your company, so you can do that for us.
Thank you very much. Fortunately, we haven't met since the last Scrutiny Commission, but I can tell you what's coming up at our next meeting, which is on December the 10th. There we'll be focusing on the proposed relocation of Eastfield House Surgery. They are consulting on moving from St John's Road, Newbury, to a new medical centre south of Newbury College. So we'll be going through the consultation process. We have to remind them that they had to consult with us. So, but this will be happening on December the 10th. The other items we'll be just looking into are access to primary care, which will include making appointments with a GP, digital services, and the general experiences and the care from your surgery and how well informed you're kept. And the 3rd item will be all age continuing care assessments. So they're the 3 main subjects that we'll be looking at our next meeting. In addition to that, we've just commenced a task and finish group, which will be looking into children's mental health and emotional well-being. And Councillor Dick was at that meeting earlier today. That's the initial meeting where we were looking at our work plan and our terms of reference. And from the new year, we will have 3 focus groups. We'll be calling different witnesses from health, the council, and various services, looking into that very important subject. And so you'll be hearing more about that. And finally, I've also attended a meeting of Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire, and Berkshire West Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Commission with Councillor Stevenson. This included a report from the Integrated Care Board, from their senior officers, and also an update on the primary care strategy. Unfortunately, obviously there are challenges here, and Bob is looking at how it can start to shift resources from acute services to prevention, which is difficult when acute is ongoing, but they recognise that prevention is important. And also inequalities, putting resources where they're most needed. In primary care, obviously there's no new funding, so they're looking at additional new ways of working, which we've all heard about. And there's also the dilemma of national insurance contributions, which will affect the recruitment of essential workers. One bit of positive news that came out of that, but there are projects, NHS projects linked to dental services in some areas, whereby there can be some local commissioning. So that looks as though there's a little bit of, so I'm going to find out a little bit more about that in case this can be relevant to our own area, where actually we can commission some NHS services here, changing the contracts. I think that's probably it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Councillor Vickers. Any questions from members for Councillor Vickers? No. Okay. Thank you for that. And just a note here, it's proposed to move scrutiny of adult social care to Health Scrutiny Committee. This has been a long-standing discussion at Constitutional Task Group, and there is now a paper or a report that's going to be going to Council seeking approval. I haven't yet seen that report. Do we know when we'll be in a position to see it?
It's just been drafted. It's just with legal at the moment for comments before going to corporate boards. So it shouldn't be too far away.
Okay. Will we be able to see that report before it goes to Council?
I would need to check with colleagues in legal, but I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions on that particular point? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Executive Forward Plan, item 12. Any comments on this, members? No. I noticed that the response to the COVID task and finish group is on the agenda for the 12th of December. So it's been here, and then are you going to be attending that, Councillor Dixon?
No.
You're not? Okay. Just in case you want to say anything at that executive meeting. I might go to it myself. I mean, obviously the executive will say what they want to say in response to the report, but it's quite good to have somebody there who can put their four penneth worth in, as it were. Yeah, okay, great. And then there's items in here about Shaw House options and corporate accommodation review that are coming up in February, which pertain to the transformation agenda. So I do think we need to get our heads around the transformation and when we want to bring that into scrutiny to have a look at. I'm conscious it's made up of lots of different elements, and things like the care homes are already, too far down the line for us to look at. But I think there will be some things that we ought to do a bit more of a detailed look. Okay, any other comments on that? No, okay. Item 13, Scrutiny Commission Work Programme. Any comments on this? Yeah, Councillor Amatharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. Not on these items, but I just want to bring to your attention and to the members of the two items which I think may be useful to bring under the Scrutiny Commission review. Number one is that the flood alleviation and then flood prevention scheme, the Section 19 report is due shortly, or it has come up. What we understand is there are a number of schemes being proposed with funding from external agencies as well as from the West Berkshire capital funding. Can we bring in officers? I know the last meeting with EA and Thames Footwork was useful, but what I'm proposing is that we can bring in officers to let us know what the flood prevention schemes being planned for the next few years. Because flood recurring occurrence now, unfortunately, as recently as yesterday's. So that's number one. Number two is this is a topic which we come across as ward members. I know other ward members may be facing these issues. The schools, traffic congestion around schools, primarily around schools within Newbury. I guess the rural wards would be affected as well. What we are regularly seeing is that there are schemes like safer schools or safer streets or whatever. The officers are working, but there is no real movement on addressing those head teachers, parents, and residents' concerns, because it's always a near miss. I have clear examples, at least from St. Joseph's schools and Winch Common School in our ward, there've been at least a number of near misses. So it would be just a matter of time we would have an unfortunate situation where a child or parent is hurt. So I'm trying to understand through offices offline, and we are working, I and Martha, and working with, but I think it would be good for Scrutiny Commission to look at how, as West Berkshire Council, making sure as we have a safer streets or school areas for children. Traffic congestion and safer schools.
Okay.
So those were the two things.
Do we know whether that's been to Transport Advisory Group? Because that would probably be a good place for that discussion to start.
I'm not sure which has gone, but I don't think that has gone into that level where there is clear indication of, okay, we've been having discussion with officers. They've been really supporting us in terms of pointing us towards safer schools project, but that doesn't translate into clearly an actionable scheme where, okay, we have identified the school and this is the problem. We are working with the head teacher and this is the plan for the next 1 year to do this. It's more of a awareness schemes and making people cycle on all those blah, blah, blah. But we need actionable schemes, and officers come and tell us, or we can scrutinize how things are improving. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Can I suggest that we ask the chair of Transport Advisory Group to update us about what they have looked at? And then I think we could probably have a conversation with Mr. Winstanley and pick his brains about specific schemes and have a chat with him about how we might bring this to scrutiny. I think that would probably be the best way to do it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. And with regard to the flood alleviation, there is actually tomorrow lunchtime a talk that the Climate Environment team have organised. It's a lunchtime online talk about the Great Shefford flood alleviation scheme. So if anyone is interested in that, if you speak to Kofi, he will send you a link. And I think that would be extremely interesting because that's quite a solid example of a flood alleviation scheme that's already in place. I am conscious of the fact that Section 19, it's very early days, I think, in terms of it informing anything that we invest in the longer term. And the irony of that, of course, is we're already into this winter's flooding. So the Section 19 report probably isn't going to help us to deal with this winter. But I think we should certainly have a look at some of the schemes that do exist and what lessons are learned from that. But a lot of it comes down to the Environment Agency and the funding that they provide for these things. But I think it's quite good that we get Thames Water and the Environment Agency in, and we had the Section 19 report this year. But there's no reason why we couldn't ask them for a written update about what they've done as a result of that. So that we don't have to wait for a whole year until we get more information. Yeah. Okay. Good. We've got housing on the list. It says Housing Task and Finish Group. But we haven't really talked about that in any great detail. I did have a meeting with the housing portfolio holder, Denise Gaines, and also with Councillor Codling, who's Chair of Health and Wellbeing, about housing. And I know there are a lot of concerns around this at the moment. So the state of disrepair of a lot of social housing, the fact that sovereigns seem to be selling off a lot of their social housing. And my understanding is that any proceeds they make from those sales do not have to be reinvested in the same district. So we could potentially see a situation where our housing stock in this area declines to the benefit of people in other districts. And I'm also aware that there are various things coming through the pipeline with regard to housing. So let me just look at my notes. So there's an empty homes paper on its way, apparently, that Sean Murphy's working on. There's a housing paper that Nick Caprara is working on. Something around housing strategy for care leavers and veterans. So there are a number of things. I'm going to keep in touch with Councillor Gaines and Councillor Codling about this. I would like, I think, Scrutiny to look at this because it's quite a big issue. It's not something we've looked at in the last 18 months, but it's just how we do it because we obviously don't want to replicate what other committees are doing. Councillor Amitharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to be part of that one, so because that's very close to my topics as well. A number of caseworks. Just a bit of an add of a context and maybe a point to add is there's also a condition where sovereign householders, like people living in those, cannot easily access services to improve their properties, like for example conversion of a bath to a shower or certain, and it's becoming a nightmarish situation for them because they can't go to private builders because they won't touch the property, and the sovereign cannot do that work until they have got recommendation from West Berkshire, which is an 18 months delay or whatever. So can we have a talking point with them, with sovereign, to say like, can they be more efficient or out of box thinking, not just go through the rigorous process because someone needs a shower, they need shower now, right? So something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Reid.
Further on the housing, I'm just wondering if we could also look at the necessary adaptations for disabled or people with disabilities or life-ending support that they need, and it's also concerning that I hear the council now has only one occupational therapist that supports this particular area, where it used to be 4 some years ago.
Yeah. There's also the issue of adoption of social housing. So I've heard that there's some developments where nobody wants to take on the social housing within the development, which is a bit of a worry. And obviously with the Eagle Quarter not having any social housing, I'm quite concerned that we have a policy, it's an NPPF policy, that we have to have a certain amount of social housing, and that is not happening. And if we're also going to see attrition with Sovereign and others selling off houses so that we lose houses in the district, then we're heading in a pretty bad direction. Councillor Reid.
I wonder if we could also add in almshouses, as we happen to have in our district the chair of the Almshouses Association. So I wonder if he'd be kind enough to come and give a talk and raise his concerns on how he can get access to things like community infrastructure levy.
Yeah. So it's how we handle this. I mean, we haven't got a meeting in January, the budget meeting's in February, and then housing is on the list for March. Would it be acceptable for members if I talk to Councillor Gaines again and get a sense of when these reports are coming through? Because I'm keen to make sure that we look at them before they go to executive. We need to look at them, but obviously not to duplicate what others are doing. And the various issues that members have asked, we can take those into consideration as well. So maybe we can have a good look at housing. I don't think there's any point in, I mean, if we have a task and finish group, it's not going to start until well into next year because we've got the project management one to do after the sports hub. And I think the horse will have bolted on a lot of those papers by then if we were to do a task and finish. So we'll keep the conversation going about that one then. Okay, good. Any other questions, comments on the work programme? No. Okay, great. So that brings us to the end of our agenda for this evening. We've concluded all of our business. Our next business is the budget meeting in February. Sorry, Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on a specific point, had we needed to go to part 2 of the children's provision item, I'm unable to view it on ModGov, Gordon. It comes up and says it's a restricted item. So
okay.
So can we make sure that we align access between normal distribution and ModGov?
Thank you, Councillor Bowick. Okay, right. I will draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for your contributions. Thank you to officers. Thank you to those who joined us online. And I will bid you good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.